Chapter 624. Qin Chongxiao is indeed an old man who has lived for hundreds of years. He sees things more clearly than others. After the meeting, Ningya and Zhong Qiyu left together. She could not help sighing with emotion about the Qin clan. Zhong Qiyu asked curiously, "Why do you say so? Why do you think the marshal asked the Qin clan to be the vanguard?" Ningya laughed and said to Zhong Qiyu, "Actually, the Qin clan doesn't need so many people to support them. They only need a dozen people to stand up and express their support, and that's enough to make the marshal dismiss the idea of attacking the Qin clan. But look at how many people stood up in the end. More than half. Do you know what this means?" Zhong Qiyu was puzzled and asked, "What does this mean?" Ningya sneered and said, "Do you know that once the forces behind these people unite, even the Federation Chairman Gao In and the military marshal Mo Jun will have to be wary of them? Now that all these forces are standing behind the Qin clan, doesn't this mean that the Qin clan has the power that even the Federation Chairman Gao In and the military marshal Mo Jun have to be wary of?" Hearing Ningya's analysis, Zhong Qiyu could not help but reveal a grave expression. She said in a deep voice, "You're saying that the marshal is afraid of the Qin clan, so he wants the Qin clan to be the vanguard to exhaust the Qin clan's strength?" Ningya shook her head and said, "Instead of saying that the marshal wants to consume the Qin clan's strength, it's better to say that he's testing the Qin clan. He wants to see if the Qin clan will do anything out of line because of the support of so many forces behind them." Zhong Qiyu was shocked when she heard this. She cried out involuntarily, "The marshal is worried that the Qin clan will rebel. Please, lower your voice. You're a nascent soul practitioner now. You represent the face of Jia Mountain. Is it appropriate for you to be so agitated?" Ningya did not know whether to laugh or cry when she saw Zhong Qiyu's shocked expression. She realized that Zhong Qiyu seemed to be rejuvenating recently. Of course, she was referring to her mentality. "I just feel that your analysis is too inconceivable. In my opinion, the reason why the Qin family is able to obtain the support of so many forces is because supporting the Qin family doesn't have any effect on these forces. However, if the Qin family wants to rebel, I can guarantee that these forces will turn around and attack the Qin family without hesitation. As long as Qin Chongxiao is not out of his mind, he should know what to do and what not to do. You're speaking in hindsight. Before we find out Qin Chongxiao's attitude, we may not be sure that the Qins have no other intentions." From Ningya's point of view, if Qin Chongxiao had not slapped Qin Yiming and apologized to the marshal, Qin Chongxiao and Qin Yiming might not have been able to walk out of the first meeting room alive. The reason why Mo Jun could be called the Federation's #1 expert was not only because of his high position and authority. What I'm more curious about now is how did the Qin clan get so many forces to stand out and support them? Zhong Qiyu looked at Ningya and asked, "What kind of magic does the Qin clan have?" "I'm not sure either." Ningya shook her head, "But there should be many people investigating this matter. We just need to wait for the second-hand information." In the flying shuttle, Qin Chongxiao looked at the silent Qin Yiming and asked, "Are you blaming me?" Qin Yiming shook his head and said, "I don't dare to blame you, father. I just don't understand why you agreed to the marshal's request. You'll put the Qin clan to death. If we don't put the Qin clan to death, how can we survive?" Qin Chongxiao looked at Qin Yiming deeply and asked, "Do you know how many forces I've joined forces with during this period of time?" Qin Yiming was stunned for a moment before he answered, "I took a rough look at the time. There were about 60 forces." Now that he recalled the situation, Qin Yiming still felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. He really didn't think that there would be so many forces standing out to support their Qin family. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have been so worried during this period of time. "You're wrong. It's 8 forces." Qin Chongxiao looked deeply at Qin Yiming. "During this period of time, I've joined forces with 8 forces and used 1/3 of the Qin clan's property in Star Dragon City in exchange for their support." Hearing Qin Chongxiao's words, Qin Yiming was stunned. After a while, he exclaimed, "But there are so many forces supporting us. I didn't expect this to happen either. I was still puzzled at the time. Then, the marshal appointed us as the vanguard. Then, I realized that someone was deliberately framing us. These people seem to be supporting us, but in fact, they're pushing us to the edge of the cliff and making the marshal suspicious of us. Qin Yiming was furious when he heard this. He gritted his teeth and said, "These people are simply demons. They're trying to drive us to death." At this moment, Qin Yiming finally understood that everything that had happened today was a trap set for the Qin family. Qin Chongxiao sneered and said, even Chairman Gao and may not be able to get so many forces to support him, but we did. What do you think the marshal will think? What will the others think? If I didn't agree to be the vanguard today, do you think we'll still have the chance to sit here and talk?" In Qin Chongxiao's opinion, the Qin clan would not be able to escape today. The mastermind had blocked all their escape routes. If there were fewer people supporting them, they might be killed on the spot. If there were more people supporting them, it would arouse the marshal's suspicion. If he refused the marshal's appointment, he might be killed on the spot. If he agreed to the marshal's appointment, the Qin clan would suffer a great loss once the war broke out. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, it would be extremely difficult for them to rebuild. In short, no matter what choice he made today, the Qin clan would suffer a great loss. "Father, are we just going to let them do whatever they want to us?" Qin Yiming looked sad and angry. "They've gone too far. Well, it's already happened. There's nothing more to say." Qin Chongxiao pursed his lips and said to Qin Yiming, "You're the master of the Qin clan. You have to be calm and rational when you do things. Don't be impulsive. Your performance today disappointed me. Go back and reflect on yourself. Don't let me down again." "Yes, I know." Qin Yiming gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He swore that if he survived, he would make those who framed the Qin clan pay the price. Chapter 6:25. Two seniors, please wait a moment. Just as Ningya and Zhong Chuyu were about to board the shuttle and leave the city hall, a graceful girl suddenly appeared in front of them, blocking their way. Looking at the girl standing in front of her, Ningya was slightly stunned, and then asked, "Are you Zhou Lin's classmate?" "So senior still remembers me." The girl smiled and said, "My name is Duan Yusin. I remember you." Ningya looked at Duan Yusin with a subtle gaze and asked, "Do you need something from us?" Duan Yusin nodded and replied, "Uncle Zhou asked me to come over. He wants to invite you two seniors to a nearby coffee shop. He said he has something to discuss with you two seniors." Hearing Duan Yusin's words, before Ningya could say anything, Zhong Chuyu said, "In that case, let's go have a cup of coffee and get to know the Deputy City Lord of Sky City." Ningya looked at Zhong Chuyu with deep meaning and sighed helplessly. Hopefully, Zhong Chuyu won't cause any trouble later. Under Duan Yusin's lead, Ningya and Zhong Chuyu came to a coffee shop with an elegant environment next to the city hall. At this time, Zhou Meng was standing in the lobby of the coffee shop, waiting to welcome them. Seeing Ningya and Zhong Chuyu arrive, Zhou Meng went forward and said with a smile, "I'm Zhou Meng. I'm honored to have you two as guests. This is one of Black City's properties in Star Dragon City. Usually, it's not open to the public, so it looks a bit deserted. The environment is good." Ningya smiled and said to Zhou Meng, "Nice to meet you. I'm Ningya." Zhou Meng smiled and said, "Although it's the first time we've met, I've heard of Miss Ning's name for a long time. You're one of the few level 4 talisman array masters in our Star Dragon Federation, and you're also a nascent soul cultivator. Compared to Miss Ning, I'm just a deputy city lord." While speaking, Zhou Meng turned his head to look at Zhong Chuyu and said, "It's the first time I've met Miss Zhong. Nice to meet you. It's also the first time I've met Mr. Zhou, but I've heard of Zhou Lin's name many times." Zhong Chuyu smiled and said, "You have a good daughter. Her future is limitless." Zhou Meng was slightly stunned when he heard this. Then he smiled and said, "I didn't expect Ms. Zhong to have heard of my daughter's name. It is her honor. Please have a seat. Let's sit down and talk." After Zhou Meng asked Ningya and Zhong Chuyu to sit down, he sat down and said to them, "With your status, I should be the one to invite you personally. However, in order to prevent some unnecessary misunderstandings, I asked Yusin to do it. I hope you don't mind. Mr. Zhou, let's talk business." Ningya looked at Zhou Meng and asked, "Mr. Zhou, what do you want to talk about by inviting us here?" "It's like this. When we were in the Carefree Secret Realm, Qin Chuan gave the key to the Carefree Secret Realm to Lin Lin. Lin Lin used this key to get an excellent reward in Black City. Therefore, I became the Deputy City Lord. Zhou Ming chuckled and said to Ningya, "Actually, we owe Qin Chuan a big favor." Hearing Zhou Ming's words, Ningya smiled slightly and asked, "Mr. Zhou, you don't want us to go back and thank Qin Chuan on your behalf, do you?" "Thank Qin Chuan. Of course, we have to thank him. However, it's not a verbal thank you, but a practical thank you." Zhou Ming took out a brocade box from his storage ring and placed it in front of Ningya. He said to Ningya, "This is a gift I specially prepared for Qin Chuan. I hope Miss Ning can take it back and give it to Qin Chuan for me." Ningya looked at the brocade box in front of her and asked curiously, "What is this? Can I open it and take a look?" "Of course." Zhou Ming smiled. "Miss Ning, don't think it's shabby." Ningya reached out and opened the brocade box in front of her. Looking at the two spirit stones exuding a blue luster in the brocade box, she was quite surprised and said, "Top-grade Thunder Spirit Stone. Although the top-grade Thunder Spirit Stone is precious, it is insignificant compared to the key to the Carefree Secret Realm that Qin Chuan gave to Lin Lin." Zhou Ming pursed his lips and said, "In addition, this is just a part of the thank you gift." "There's more?" Ningya was a little surprised. In her opinion, the value of the key to the Carefree Secret Realm to Qin Chuan was far less than the two top-grade Thunder Spirit Stones. Zhou Ming's thank you gift was enough. There was no need for anything else. Zhou Ming looked at Ningya with a subtle gaze and asked, "What does Miss Ning think of Lin Lin?" Hearing Zhou Ming's words, Ningya's heart moved slightly. She replied, "Zhou Lin is excellent in both moral and academic performance. Her talent is outstanding. She's a good child." Hearing this, Zhou Ming looked deeply at Ningya and said, "Lin Lin and Qin Chuan have known each other since high school. Their relationship has always been good. Now that the two children have grown up, it's time for them to talk about marriage. Miss Ning, as Qin Chuan's teacher, do you think Lin Lin is worthy of Qin Chuan?" "Mr. Zhou, do you mean to matchmake Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin?" Ningya looked at Zhou Ming and asked, "Does Zhou Lin know about this?" "I haven't told Lin Lin yet." Zhou Ming chuckled and said, "Now that Qin Chuan doesn't have parents, Miss Ning is the only person close to Qin Chuan. If Miss Ning doesn't have any opinions about Qin Chuan and Lin Lin, it won't be too late for me to tell Lin Lin." "Mr. Zhou, of course I don't have any opinions about Zhou Lin, but I think it's up to the children to decide." Ningya smiled slightly. "I don't think we need to interfere with the children's relationship. Let them develop freely." "Miss Ning, you're right. I was too reckless." Zhou Ming's expression didn't change. He was still smiling. "There's one more thing about the preparation of the heir of Kunlun's field. Did Qin Chuan get a recommendation letter?" Ningya chuckled and asked, "Why do you care about this, Mr. Zhou?" Zhou Ming explained, "Here's the thing. I know a senior who wrote a recommendation letter for Lin Lin. She can skip the selection and directly become a preparation of the heir of Kunlun's field. If Qin Chuan hasn't gotten a recommendation letter, I can ask the senior to write one for Qin Chuan. This is the other gift I just mentioned." Ningya asked curiously, "As far as I know, only the heir of Kunlun's field is qualified to write a recommendation letter. Is the senior you know an heir of Kunlun's field?" Zhou Ming nodded and said, "The senior I know is indeed an heir of Kunlun's field, but for some reason, he's no longer an heir of Kunlun's field. His recommendation letter is still valid." Ningya nodded and said, "Thank you, Mr. Zhou. Qin Chuan already has a recommendation letter, so I won't bother you." Chapter 626. Hotel. Ningya looked at Zhong Qiyu, who was standing on the balcony, and asked, "What do you think Zhou Ming meant when he said those words to us today?" Hearing this, Zhong Qiyu turned to look at Ningya and asked, "What do you think he means?" "He was showing us his power." Ningya narrowed her eyes and whispered, "Black City's Vice City Lord, a senior who was once an heir. These are all what he wanted us to see today." Zhong Qiyu sneered. "So, he really wants to marry his daughter to Qin Chuan today? Is this part of the thank you gift? Maybe this is not his intention, but the City Lord of Black Cities, The union between Qin Xuan and Zhou Lin is a marriage between the Black Moon Combat Academy and Black City in their eyes. Ningya smiled softly. In my opinion, Zhou Meng becoming the Vice City Lord is not so much a reward from Black City, but a way to raise his status and make the marriage between Zhou Lin and Qin Xuan look more like a match. Hearing Ning Ya's words, Zhong Qiyu was stunned for a moment. After a while, she said hesitantly, "Isn't it too dark to think of it this way? Is it?" Ningya glanced at Zhong Qiyu. "I think you've been too comfortable under Uncle Zhong's protection. You don't even have the most basic ability to think." Ningya's words made Zhong Qiyu speechless because what Ningya said was the truth. All these years under Uncle Zhong's protection, she indeed did not experience any storms. It could be said that she lived a very comfortable life and gradually lost her vigilance. Then, is this Zhou Meng's idea or Zhou Lin's? Zhong Qiyu looked at Ningya. "I think it's Zhou Meng's idea or Black City's idea, but Zhou Lin doesn't know." Ningya asked curiously, "How do you know?" "Because I once investigated Zhou Lin's information and understood the relationship between her and Qin Xuan. In my opinion, the relationship between Qin Xuan and Zhou Lin is pure and simple. If I were Zhou Lin, I definitely wouldn't want my relationship with Qin Xuan to be tainted with any benefits." Zhong Qiyu said with a serious face, "Whether it's friendship, love, or even familial love, once it's mixed with benefits, it will become complicated and have a different flavor." Pa Ningyo applauded and said with a smile, "What you said makes sense. That's why I told Zhou Meng to let the children make their own choices." "But do you think Zhou Lin has a chance?" Zhong Qiyu's eyes were subtle. "Qin Xuan seems to be more interested in Princess Rao from the Demon Realm." "You'll have to ask Qin Xuan himself." Zhou Lin chuckled. "There are so many girls who like him. He can always pick one that he likes." Cheers! To celebrate everyone's reunion, cheers. In the dining hall of the Black Moon Combat Academy, Qin Xuan and the others sat together. The table was filled with ingredients and a copper pot. Everyone held a glass of juice in their hands and laughed as they clinked glasses with each other. Qin Xuan stood up and stepped on a chair. He said to everyone, "Everyone, listen to me. Let me introduce our new companions. First, Shi Yu from the World Mountain." Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Shi Yu stood up from his seat in embarrassment. He bowed slightly to everyone and said, "Hello, everyone. I'm Shi Yu. Please take care of me in the future." "You're welcome." Chen Chongqing chuckled and said to Shi Yu, "We'll be brothers in the future. No need to be so shy. Relax. You can be polite to anyone but Chongqing. He's very friendly." Luzi giggled. "If you need anything, just ask him. Don't be afraid of trouble." Everyone laughed loudly. Qin Xuan then said to everyone, "Next, I'll introduce our second new companion. He's also from the World Mountain, Hu Xiao." Hu Xiao stood up and cupped his fist to everyone. "Hello, everyone. I'm Hu Xiao. Please take care of me in the future. If there's anything I've done wrong, please tell me. I'll do my best to correct it. Don't be so serious. We're all friends. Relax." Chen Chongqing smiled at Hu Xiao. "You don't have to be so polite with us. If you're too polite, we'll become strangers." Hu Xiao nodded lightly. He then sat down and drank a mouthful of juice to calm himself down. To be honest, this was the first time he had come into contact with so many humans. It was also the first time he had experienced such a gathering where there was no hierarchy. It felt very fresh and special. "Boss, how long have you been in the Foundation Establishment realm? When are you going to advance to the Golden Core realm?" Chen Chongqing looked at Qin Xuan and asked curiously, "By the way, your Foundation Establishment banquet hasn't been held yet, right?" Chen Chongqing's words aroused everyone's curiosity. Qin Xuan was now in the Foundation Establishment realm and was only one step away from the Golden Core realm. However, Qin Xuan was not yet 20 years old. As far as everyone knew, the youngest cultivator in the Golden Core realm in history was a genius from the Yi family, one of the 4 great families. He advanced to the Golden Core realm at the age of 21. Based on Qin Xuan's current situation, it was very likely that he would break this record. Facing everyone's curious gaze, Qin Xuan laughed and said, "There's no hurry to advance to the Golden Core realm. I'm going to find a training camp to learn how to drive a battlesuit. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Long Xiao looked at Lu Zi subtly and then said to Qin Chuan, "Did you secretly inquire about Lu Zi's schedule? Why do you want to learn how to drive a battlesuit, right after Lu Zi signed up for the EXO special training camp?" Hearing this, Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi in surprise and asked, "You want to learn how to drive a battlesuit too?" Lu Zi nodded and replied, "I'm also preparing to advance to the Golden Core realm. Learning how to drive a battlesuit and become an EXO is something I must do." In the Foundation Establishment realm, cultivators relied on magical equipment and spells to fight. In the Golden Core realm, cultivators relied more on battlesuits than magical equipment and spells. Before advancing to the Golden Core realm, participating in the EXO special training camp to learn how to drive a battlesuit was something that every Foundation Establishment realm cultivator would do. Now, that Zhou Lin was in the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. It was the best time for her to learn how to drive a battlesuit. Hearing Lu Zi's answer, Qin Chuan was immediately interested and asked curiously, "Which special training camp did you sign up for? What's the environment like?" "I signed up for the Sky Sea Special Training Camp. It's the most famous, strict, and efficient EXO special training camp in the Star Dragon Federation. Half of the best EXOs in the Star Dragon Federation came from the Sky Sea Special Training Camp," Lu Zi said to Qin Chuan expectantly. "Registration hasn't closed yet. Do you want to sign up? We can go and learn together." Hearing this, Qin Chuan agreed almost without thinking. "Okay." Chapter 6:27. The training period of the EXO Special Training Camp was usually about 2 months. After the training was over, it would be the time to go to Star Dragon City to register as a candidate heir of Kunlun. Qin Chuan's schedule was packed, and he had no free time at all. Qin Chuan originally wanted to stay in school for a few days and wait for Ningya to return so that they could meet before going to the EXO Special Training Camp. However, now that there was a suitable EXO Special Training Camp, there was no need for him to continue waiting at school. The meeting could wait. However, before he left, Qin Chuan had to make arrangements for Hu Xiao and Shi Yu. Hu Xiao had just arrived, so he was unfamiliar with everything in the Star Dragon Federation. Qin Chuan had arranged for Wind Howl to join a tour group and have Hu Xiao follow the tour group around the various scenic spots of the Star Dragon Federation for a period of time, familiarizing himself with the local customs of the Star Dragon Federation. Hu Xiao was very satisfied with Qin Chuan's arrangement because he was very interested in everything in the Star Dragon Federation. He also wanted to walk around the Star Dragon Federation and understand the life of the Star Dragon Federation. As for Shi Yu, she would continue to cultivate in the Black Moon Combat Academy. Although she had reached the Golden Core stage, she still needed some time to recover from the injuries she had suffered in the past few years. Finally, there was Hui Tong. Hui Tong wanted to stay by Qin Chuan's side and protect him. However, the Sky Sea Special Training Camp had a rule that prohibited students from bringing others into the camp, so Hui Tong couldn't stay by Qin Chuan's side. Originally, Qin Chuan wanted to let Hui Tong stay at Dragon Spirit Lake for a while, but Hui Tong didn't want to be too far away from Qin Chuan. Without any other choice, Qin Chuan could only let Hui Tong stay by his side. When the time came, he would arrange for Hui Tong to stay in the city closest to the special training camp and meet up with him after the special training ended. After solving these problems, Qin Chuan, Lu Zi, and Hui Tong boarded the flying ship to the Sky Sea Special Training Camp. The Sky Sea Special Training Camp was located in the northwest of the Star Dragon Federation. It was located in the Western Desert, and there were few people there. There was only one flying ship passing through every day. If one missed it, they would have to wait for the next day. On the third day after Qin Chuan's group of 3 left the Black Moon Combat Academy, they arrived at the Western Wastelands border city, Western Sand City. As the only city on the Western Wastelands border, Western Sand City had a large flow of people and was extremely prosperous. It was comparable to some of the larger cities in the central region of the Star Dragon Federation. Is this West Sand City? Qin Chuan looked through the porthole of the flying ship at the huge city made entirely of sand in front of him. He could not help but exclaim, "So cool." Western Sand City has a long history. We started building the city after our Star Dragon Federation conquered the Western Wastelands. It has been nearly 10,000 years since then. It started as a small town and gradually grew to its current size, Lu Zi explained to Qin Chuan with a smile. Moreover, the most famous scenery in Western Sand City is the city within the city. This is because Western Sand City has been expanded several times, and each time, it has been expanded on its original location. Today, Western Sand City already has 6 inner cities. Including the outermost city, there are 7 inner cities in total. 7 inner cities? Qin Chuan was somewhat expectant as he said, "I'm really looking forward to it." After a simple inspection, the flying ship that Qin Chuan's group was on finally landed at Western Sand City's 7 Cities aviation base. The moment Qin Chuan stepped out of the flying ship, he could feel the warmth of Western Sand City. The ground was boiling hot, and the air was boiling hot. Everything was boiling hot. What a high temperature! Qin Chuan was somewhat shocked as he said to Lu Zi beside him, "This should be at least 50 degrees, right? That's why if outsiders want to stay in Western Sand City for a long time, the first thing they need to do is to protect themselves from the sun." Lu Zi smiled as she handed Qin Chuan a blue bottle. "This is sunscreen. You better spray some on your body. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll turn into a chimpanzee." Qin Chuan did not hesitate as he took the bottle and sprayed it on his body a few times. The boiling hot air seemed to be isolated by a layer of water vapor, and his entire body instantly became much cooler. As for the huitong, it was not that he did not use these. This little bit of temperature had no effect on the huitong. "Let's go. We'll go to the city and take a look." Qin Chuan returned the sunscreen to Lu Zi and then walked outside. At this time, there were many tourists at the aviation base, and it looked like there was a sea of people. Qin Chuan's group passed through the crowd and finally walked out of the aviation base with great difficulty, truly entering the boundary of Western Sand City. "Brother, do you need a tour guide? It's cheap. 10 spirit stones a day." "Brother, my name is Big Mountain. I'm the best tour guide in Western Sand City. Only 8 spirit stones a day. Good quality and cheap." "Boss, don't listen to them. I'm definitely the cheapest tour guide in Western Sand City. Only 7 spirit stones a day. If you have any questions that I can't answer, then I won't take a single cent." Qin Chuan's group had just walked out of the aviation base when they were instantly surrounded by enthusiastic tour guides. Faced with these enthusiastic tour guides, Qin Chuan had a helpless expression. He casually pointed at a skinny tour guide and said loudly, You, I'll take you. The rest of you can disperse." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, these tour guides did not continue to insist. They dispersed and went to find other tourists. Qin Chuan finally let out a long sigh of relief when he saw this. Aren't these tour guides a little too enthusiastic? Qin Chuan could not help but complain. They're even more enthusiastic than the air in Western Sand City. Lu Zi smiled slightly and explained to Qin Chuan, "You've never been to Western Sand City before, so you don't know much about this place. These tour guides are all organized by the local tyrants of Western Sand City. If outsiders don't hire a tour guide here, it can be said that it's difficult to go anywhere." Qin Chuan was a little surprised when he heard this. He asked, "There's such an unspoken rule? Doesn't anyone care?" "As long as you don't go too far, naturally no one will care. Moreover, outsiders like us do need a tour guide." Lu Zi chuckled. "You still don't walk around much. You'll know when you walk around more." Qin Chuan asked curiously, "Since they're all together, why are the prices different?" Lu Zi smiled and explained to Qin Chuan, "This is also an unspoken rule. Give a tour guide 10 spirit stones, and the tour guide will take you to all 7 cities. For every spirit stone less, there'll be 1 less city. So it sounds like some tour guides charge less spirit stones, but in reality, they also put in less effort." Hearing Lu Zi's explanation, Qin Chuan could not help but stare in shock. There was actually such an unspoken rule. Seeing Qin Chuan's dumbfounded expression, Lu Zi pursed her lips and smiled. She said to Qin Chuan, "Just follow me here. I promise I won't lose you." Qin Chuan turned to look at the tour guide, standing at the side, and said, 10 spirit stones. Let's go to your best hotel first." Chapter 628. Every major city in the Western Sand City had a Western Sand Hotel. It was a hotel built by the natives of the Western Sand City and was also the best hotel in the Western Sand City. When he heard that Qin Chuan wanted to go to the best hotel in the Western Sand City, Dong, who was the tour guide, brought Qin Chuan to the Western Sand Hotel in the center of the seventh city without any hesitation. He patted his chest and said to Qin Chuan, "Boss, the Western Sand Hotel in front of you is definitely the best hotel in the Western Sand City. You can go out and ask around. If anyone says that the Western Sand Hotel is not the best, I will immediately return the 10 spirit stones to you." Qin Chuan looked at the beautifully decorated Western Sand Hotel in front of him and nodded lightly. "It looks like the environment is not bad. Boss, let me tell you, the best thing about the Western Sand Hotel is not its supporting facilities, but its commonality." Dong chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, "Our Western Sand City has a total of 7 major cities. There must be a Western Sand Hotel in the center of each major city. As long as you stay in one of the Western Sand Hotels, you can stay in the other Western Sand Hotels at any time without any additional fees. It means that you can stay wherever you go. It is absolutely convenient and fast." Hearing Dong's introduction, Qin Chuan could not help but reveal a surprised expression. He did not expect the Western Sand Hotel to have such a special service. It was really convenient. Everyone listened to Dong's introduction of the Western Sand Hotel's characteristics as they walked into the Western Sand Hotel. Although there were people coming and going on the streets outside, the Western Sand Hotel was relatively deserted. The main reason for this was that the Western Sand Hotel's price was too expensive. A night stay was at least 100 spiritual value points. Moreover, they did not accept spirit stones and only accepted credit cards. After hearing Dong mention the special rules of the Western Sand Hotel, Qin Chuan asked curiously, why did the Western Sand Hotel set these special rules? Of course, it's for better service and better customers. Dong smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Generally speaking, outsiders who come to Western Sand City for the first time would first choose to familiarize themselves with the city's environment. Then, they would choose a good hotel to stay in. Only a generous cultivator like you would directly request to stay in the best hotel. The Western Sand Hotel mainly serves powerful cultivators like you." After hearing Dong's explanation, Qin Chuan nodded in understanding. Just as he was about to speak, there was a burst of disdainful laughter. A mere foundation establishment cultivator can be considered a powerful cultivator? A tall and handsome figure slowly walked out from the corridor. He looked at Qin Chuan's group with disdain. When he saw Lu Zi standing beside Qin Chuan, his eyes suddenly lit up. He quickly walked towards Lu Zi and elegantly said to Lu Zi, "Beautiful lady, I'm Ke Zhangyu. May I have the honor of inviting you to dinner?" Facing Ke Zhangyu's invitation, Lu Zi's face revealed a hint of disgust. She coldly said, "Please stay away from me. Beautiful lady, you have no future with such a person." Ke Zhangyu glanced at Qin Chuan, then very seriously said to Lu Zi, "I'm Ke Zhangyu, the second son of the Ke family. I'm now in the early stage of the Jindan realm. Whether it's in terms of status or strength, I'm stronger than him." Faced with Ke Zhangyu's confidence, Lu Zi couldn't help but want to laugh. She looked at Qin Chuan and asked, "Can you be a gentleman and help me get rid of this annoying fly?" Qin Chuan smiled slightly when he heard this. He slowly stepped forward and stood in front of Ke Zhangyu. Looking at the disdainful expression on Ke Zhangyu's face, he asked curiously, "Who sent you?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ke Zhangyu's expression couldn't help but change slightly. He pretended to be confused and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I don't understand at all." "It doesn't matter if you don't understand. I'll explain it to you." Qin Chuan looked at Ke Zhangyu with a subtle expression and said, "I don't care who's behind you and what's the reason for you to make trouble for me. Please go back and tell him that I came to the West Sand City this time to participate in the EXO special training camp. I don't want to get involved in other things. We'd better mind our own business. Do you understand?" Seeing that Ke Zhangyu still wanted to quibble, Qin Chuan looked back at Hui Tong and said to Hui Tong, "Senior, please make him shut up." "I got it." Receiving Qin Chuan's signal, Hui Tong looked at Ke Zhangyu indifferently. His aura suddenly burst out and pressed down on Ke Xiangyu like Mount Tai. The moment he felt the aura from Hui Tong, Ke Xiangyu's face suddenly turned pale. His expression was even more frightened. He trembled and screamed involuntarily, "Nascent soul! You're a nascent soul cultivator." Ke Xiangyu didn't expect that the ordinary-looking middle-aged man beside Qin Chuan was actually a nascent soul cultivator. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have jumped out no matter what. Looking at the frightened expression on Ke Xiangyu's face, Qin Chuan said indifferently, "Can you go back and report now?" I'll go now." Ke Xiangyu didn't dare to stay here any longer. If he angered Hui Tong and Hui Tong killed him in anger, he wouldn't be able to reason with anyone. Looking at Ke Xiangyu's fleeing figure, Lu Zi asked Qin Chuan with some doubts, "How do you know that someone is deliberately targeting you?" Qin Chuan smiled and said to Zhou Lin, "It's not a secret that we left the school and came to the West Sand City. As long as you want to investigate, you can definitely find out." Ever since I left the carefree secret realm, I've been the focus of attention of all the major forces. They're not only paying attention to me because of the consul's leg, but also because of my teacher, advisor, and my godmother in the World Mountain. To be more narcissistic, there are too many forces who want to have a good relationship with me. Once they have a good relationship with me, it's equivalent to having a good relationship with at least 3 nascent soul cultivators. Who would want to miss such an opportunity? Zhou Lin was a little puzzled when she heard this. She said, "If that's the case, shouldn't Ke Xiangyu directly befriend you? Why is he looking for trouble with you?" Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Zhou Lin, "The purpose of Ke Xiangyu's appearance is very simple. He wants to provoke me and find trouble with me. He mocked me first, and when he found that I was indifferent to it, he immediately turned to harass you. He wants to use this to provoke me. I guess if I'm really fooled and have a dispute with him because of this, someone will definitely jump out to support us and deter Ke Xiangyu with force or background, making Ke Xiangyu apologize to us. Do you believe it?" Hearing Qin Chuan's explanation, Zhou Lin was a little stunned. She said, "Is this the legendary self-directed version of the hero saving the beauty?" Chapter 629. Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He helplessly said to Zhou Lin, "I'm not a beauty. Let's go. We'll book a room first." Although they had Hui Tong by their side, Qin Chuan was still worried about living separately. Therefore, he asked Dong to choose a suite with 3 rooms for them. The price of a night's stay was 3,000 spiritual value points. Qin Chuan generously paid for a month's room. When they left West Sand City for the EXO special training camp, Hui Tong would continue to stay here until they returned. As for Qin Chuan, he arranged for him to wait in the hotel's lobby. They would return to their room to rest for a while before coming down. After entering the room, Qin Chuan glanced at the room's environment and smiled at Lu Zi. "The room's environment looks pretty good. Ladies first. You can choose the room you like first." Lu Zi didn't immediately choose a room. Instead, she took out a circular electronic device from her storage ring and placed it on the coffee table in the living room. Seeing Lu Zi's actions, Qin Chuan curiously asked, "What is this?" "This is a jammer. It can block all the surveillance equipment in the room." Lu Zi smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Although it's unlikely for something like this to happen in this hotel, I think it's better to be careful." "What you said makes sense." Qin Chuan chuckled and asked Lu Zi, "Do we need to prepare before going to the Tianhai special training camp?" Lu Zi thought for a moment and said to Qin Chuan, "Prepare to be eliminated." Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment. He was puzzled and asked, "Prepare to be eliminated? What do you mean?" "We've only registered successfully. We haven't been admitted yet." Lu Zi explained to Qin Chuan with a smile. "Every year, when the Tianhai Special Training Camp opens, there'll be a lot of people signing up. The Tianhai Special Training Camp selects the best 30 students to train. As for those who don't make the cut, they can either wait for the next class or find another special training camp. With our strength, it's unlikely that we'll be eliminated, but we still need to be mentally prepared." Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi in astonishment and asked, "Are there a lot of people signing up every year?" Lu Zi recalled for a moment, then replied, A few years ago, there were more than 1,000 people who signed up for the Tianhai Special Training Camp, and the lowest level of cultivation was at the late stage of foundation establishment. What a surprising elimination rate. Qin Chuan sighed. The Tianhai Special Training Camp did this to ensure the efficiency of the training. That's right. Luzi nodded. Students who graduate from the Tianhai Special Training Camp can be certified as EXOs directly, but students who graduate from other special training camps have to go through an additional assessment. Only after passing the assessment can they be certified as EXOs. So now you know how amazing the Tianhai Special Training Camp is. The more amazing the Tianhai Special Training Camp is, the more we want to get in. Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Lu Zi, "You mustn't be left behind." "Of course not." Lu Zi stuck her tongue out at Qin Chuan. "I'll definitely get in with you." Ke Zhangyu ran into a guest room, still in shock. After closing the door, he leaned against the door and gasped for breath. He didn't want to experience the feeling of standing on the edge of the cliff of death a second time in his life. "You seem to have encountered something you're very afraid of." A cold voice suddenly sounded in Ke Zhangyu's ear, startling him. When he saw who had spoken, the fear on Ke Zhangyu's face immediately turned into anger. He couldn't help but roar, "Damn it! Why didn't you tell me that there's a nascent soul cultivator by Qin Chuan's side?" Hearing Ke Zhangyu's angry roar, the person couldn't help but be stunned. He said with some surprise, "There's a nascent soul cultivator by Qin Chuan's side? Who is it? Could it be Ningya? As far as I know, Ningya should be on her way back to the Black Moon Combat Academy." "How would I know who he is?" Ke Zhangyu said angrily. At this point, Ke Zhangyu suddenly froze. He looked at the figure standing in front of him with a confused expression and muttered, "I forgot what he looks like." "You forgot?" The person was also stunned. "How could you forget?" "I don't know." Ke Zhangyu shook his head, and the expression on his face became somewhat painful. "I don't know why I forgot. I really can't remember." Seeing the painful expression on Ke Zhangyu's face, the person couldn't help but frown and whisper, "Could it be that the nascent soul cultivator did something to you and made you forget what he looks like?" "I don't remember anything. I only remember that he's a nascent soul cultivator." Ke Zhangyu shook his head and said, "I really can't remember anything. Forget it. If you can't remember, then don't think about it." The person whispered to Ke Zhangyu, "Our deal ends here. I won't give you any less benefits, but if you let others know about our deal, you'll die miserably. Do you understand?" Ke Zhangyu suddenly said, "By the way, Qin Chuan has seen through our tricks. He also asked me to tell you that he came here to participate in the Tianhai Special Training Camp and doesn't want to get involved in other things. He said that he wants you to mind your own business." Hearing Ke Zhangyu's words, the person's expression suddenly changed. He grabbed Ke Zhangyu's collar and said in a low voice, "You told Qin Chuan about our plan?" "No, I didn't." Ke Zhangyu shook his head and said, "Qin Chuan guessed it. I didn't say anything." "That's good." The person let go of Ke Zhangyu's collar and whispered, "Watch your mouth." The Tianhai Special Training Camp held an EXO Special Training Camp in December every year. It was currently the end of November. Qin Chuan and Lu Zi planned to stay in the Westan city for 2 days before leaving. During this time, they could clearly feel that the number of people staying in the Westan Hotel had increased, and most of them were young cultivators. It seemed that they were all here to participate in the Tianhai Special Training Camp's entrance examination. Qin Chuan, the Tianhai Special Training Camp, has announced the name list and the content of the examination on their official website. Lu Zi came to Qin Chuan's side and sat down. She magnified the content on the optical computer and showed it to Qin Chuan. She said to Qin Chuan, "The Tianhai Special Training Camp's entrance examination will start at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. All students who sign up for the examination are required to walk across the Western Desert to reach the training camp's base. The first 30 people to arrive will be accepted. The examination ends at 9 o'clock on December 1st. Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but frown slightly. Isn't the content of the examination too sudden? Walking across the Western Desert? I can't believe he thought of something like that. Chapter 630. What's the meaning of this? You want to seal our storage rings? Why? Qin Xuan and Lu Zi had just arrived at the location of the Tianhai Special Training Camp's assessment when they heard a commotion. Curious, they walked over to take a look. After understanding the cause of the dispute, their expressions changed slightly. The Tianhai Special Training Camp actually wanted to seal their storage rings, forbidding them from using the mission items in their storage rings while crossing the Western Wasteland on foot. They could bring things into the Western Wasteland, but they had to carry them on their backs. Qin Xuan looked at the people who were still arguing, then turned his gaze to Lu Zi. Did the Tianhai Special Training Camp have such a rule before? Lu Zi shook her head. The Tianhai Special Training Camp's assessment content is different every year, and the requirements are different as well. But this is the most ridiculous requirement I've ever seen. The temperature in the Western Wasteland was above 80 degrees all year round. Cultivators below the Golden Core stage were at risk of heat stroke and dehydration. To cross the Western Wasteland on foot, one had to prepare sufficient drinking water and food, as well as the necessary sunscreen. For this assessment, Qin Xuan and Lu Zi had stuffed their storage rings to the brim. If they had to seal their storage rings during the assessment, all their preparations would have been in vain. Qin Xuan glanced at the resolute Tianhai Special Training Camp staff, then said to Lu Zi, "All right, let's hurry up and get ready." As he spoke, Qin Xuan had already taken out the things he needed from his storage ring. Aside from a storm of windsword, there were also some nutritional supplements and food. Fortunately, they had already put these things in their backpacks. Otherwise, it would have taken a lot of time to organize them. Seeing that Qin Xuan had already started moving, Lu Zi didn't waste any time. She immediately took out the things she needed from her storage ring and put them away. After organizing her things, she smiled at Qin Xuan and asked, "Do you feel like you're back in time to the entrance exam? Back then, we were crossing the Black Moon Mountains together and ran into a lot of trouble." Qin Xuan smiled and said to Lu Zi, "I was wondering why I felt a sense of familiarity. So that's why." "You don't say. I really do feel that way." Lu Zi reached out her hand to Qin Xuan and smiled. "Let's shake hands." To commemorate another joint entrance exam, Qin Xuan reached out and shook her hand. "Let's not abandon each other. Let's enter the academy together." While the people in front of them were still arguing over the sealing of the storage rings, Qin Xuan and LVZ had already completed the sealing of the storage rings with the help of the staff. They had embarked on the journey across the western desert. Although the temperature at the edge of the Western Wasteland was high, it was only about 60 degrees. It was still within the tolerance range of Qin Xuan and Lu Zi. As the two stayed in the Western Wasteland for a long time, their bodies gradually showed signs of being unable to bear the heat. Qin Xuan looked at Lu Zi's red cheeks and said to Lu Zi, "It's about time." LVZ nodded and raised her hand to wipe the sweat on her face before she replied, "In my current situation, I can only walk for 2 hours at most. As we go deeper, the temperature will get hotter and hotter, and the time I can last will get shorter." While speaking, Lu Zi took out 2 blue potions from her backpack. She handed one to Qin Xuan and injected the other into her arm. This was the cooling potion they had prepared before. It was called Frost Power. Frost Power could lower the human body's temperature to the freezing point. Generally speaking, Frost Power was used to adapt to cold environments. But now, Frost Power was used by Qin Xuan and Lu Zi to neutralize the high temperature in their bodies, so that their body temperature could be maintained at a normal level in a hot environment. After injecting Frost Power, Qin Xuan and Lu Zi immediately felt much more comfortable. They no longer felt unbearably hot. "Comfortable?" Qin Xuan laughed. "This feeling is really good." Lu Zi nodded with a smile. "Yes, now." Before Lu Zi could finish her words, she was attracted by the commotion to the side. A tall figure rumbled over from not far away. It very calmly passed them and continued to advance at a constant speed. "Is that a battle armor?" Qin Xuan looked at the huge gray-white humanoid armor with a face full of astonishment. "It's not a battle armor. It's a type of modified land tank." Lu Zi looked at the land tank with a subtle expression. She said to Qin Xuan, "The people inside must be enjoying themselves very much right now. They're not afraid of the heat and can even comfortably drink a few cups of wine." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qinchuan's expression became strange. He asked, "Is this allowed by the rules?" Before Lu Zi could answer this question, the optical computer the staff of the Sky Sea Special Training Camp had given them before they set off suddenly flashed. Academy 0876 has violated the rules of driving a land tank and crossing the Western Wasteland on foot. Academy 0876 has been disqualified. Seeing the information on the optical computer, Qinchuan cracked a smile. He said to Lu Zi, "This guy really is too smart for his own good. If driving a land tank counts as walking, then we might as well take a flying shuttle." Lu Zi looked at Qinchuan with an odd expression. She asked, "Don't tell me you didn't feel moved in that instant? Don't you want to drive a land tank forward?" Qinchuan coughed lightly and explained, "I never said I was moved. In the Western Wasteland, even at night, the sky was only slightly dark. However, the temperature was much lower than during the day. Logically speaking, night was the best time to travel, but Qinchuan and Lu Zi found a place to set up their tents. The rules say we can only stay in tents. It's really hard for us to find such primitive camping equipment." Qinchuan looked at the already set up tent and said to Lu Zi, "We'll take turns keeping watch tonight. You rest first." Lu Zi nodded lightly and said to Qinchuan, "The Western Wasteland is the most dangerous and fatal at night. You must be careful." "Don't worry, I'll be careful." Qinchuan smiled. "You rest well." After Lu Zi entered the tent to rest, Qinchuan sat down with his back to the tent. He didn't circulate his energy, only looking around vigilantly, paying attention to any signs of movement in the desert. Not long after, Qinchuan heard rustling sounds. Hearing these sounds, Qinchuan's heart skipped a beat. He muttered in a low voice, "They're here? The Western Wasteland's night killers, sandworms." Chapter 631. Sandworms were a type of insect unique to the Western Desert. During the day, when the temperature was high, sandworms would hide underground to recuperate. At night, when the temperature in the desert dropped, sandworms would come out of the ground to move about. Sandworms were extremely aggressive. They would attack any foreign species they encountered and would not stop until they were dead. Individually, the sandworms were not particularly strong. However, sandworms would always move about in groups. Thus, not even powerful cultivators would casually provoke the sandworms. Under Qinchuan's gaze, fist-sized sandbags suddenly appeared on the flat ground one after another. Yellowish-brown insects crawled out of these sandbags and moved their bodies casually. After a while, they moved in a direction in groups as if they were looking for food. Looking at the sandworms slowly crawling in front of him, Qinchuan chuckled and looked at a black ball on the side. He smiled and said, "This thing can really block the sandworm's perception. I just don't know how it works." Just as Qinchuan was thinking about these questions, their surroundings had completely turned into a sea of sandworms. There were sandworms as far as the eye could see. It was a very visual impact. If there was no blocker, Qinchuan could not imagine how they would be attacked by the sandworms. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, dozens of figures flew from the darkness in the distance and landed heavily in the pile of sandworms. These people were more or less injured. They looked very new and should have been from a recent battle. Looking at the bite marks, they should have been fighting sandworms. Seeing these people, Qinchuan chuckled and whispered, "There are actually people who didn't buy a blocker. This is unexpected." Lu Zi, who was resting in the tent, heard the movement outside and came out. She was shocked when she saw the sandworms all over the mountain. After confirming that they had not killed any of them, she sighed in relief and said to Qinchuan, "These things look so disgusting." No girl liked bugs, and it was the same for cultivators. Qinchuan chuckled and said to Lu Zi, "It is indeed disgusting, but we have the shielding device, so it only looks disgusting. Those people are the real disgusting ones." After hearing Qinchuan's words, Lu Zi subconsciously looked at the people who were struggling under the sandworms. She asked curiously, "What's wrong with these people?" It's probably because they didn't bring any shielding devices and didn't pay attention to the sandworms. That's why they ended up like this. Qinchuan smiled. They're coming toward us." As he spoke, Qingchuan's expression changed. He frowned as he looked at the dozen figures rushing towards them. He said to Lu Zi, "We can't continue to watch the show so peacefully. Let's get ready for battle." Hearing Qingchuan's words, Lu Zi asked coldly, "Who are you preparing to fight?" "Do it well," Qingchuan said helplessly. "They don't come with good intentions." Jiang Feng swore that he had never been so aggrieved in his life. He was sleeping soundly, but he was ambushed by a swarm of worms. More importantly, there were so many of them that he was no match for them. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around him, he might have become food for these worms. Damn it, don't these worms sleep at night? Jiang Feng was extremely annoyed. As a cultivator who had already completed the foundation establishment stage, this was the first time he was so embarrassed. Jiang Feng's companions were also extremely annoyed. No one wanted to be woken up by a swarm of worms in the middle of the night. "Jiang Feng, look over there." Suddenly, someone shouted and said to Jiang Feng, who was fighting with the sandworms, "There are people over there, but there are no worms over there." Hearing his companion's words, Jiang Feng subconsciously looked in the direction his companion was pointing at. As expected, there was a tent and 2 people over there. Moreover, there were no sandworms around them. It was too strange. Jiang Feng said to everyone without hesitation, "Let's go, let's go." When they heard Jiang Feng's words, everyone who had already lost their patience with the sandworms immediately rushed toward the tents aggressively. They even brought the sandworms with them. Qingchuan stood in front of Lu Zi and did not hesitate to inscribe a lightning manipulation talisman array. He immediately set up a lightning net in front of them. If Jiang Feng and the others wanted to rush over, they would definitely be blocked by the lightning net. Obviously, Qingchuan did not welcome Jiang Feng and the others at all. However, Jiang Feng and the others obviously did not have such self-awareness. When he saw Qingchuan setting up a lightning net, Jiang Feng immediately became furious and shouted at Qingchuan, "Bastard, what are you trying to do?" In the face of Jiang Feng's angry questioning, Qingchuan looked at him deeply and said, "The rules of the Tianhai Special Training Camp did not say that killing is not allowed." Hearing Qingchuan's words, Jiang Feng could not help but hold his breath. He could feel that Qingchuan was not joking with him. He really wanted to kill them. You were not prepared and were attacked by the sandworms. Then you have to bear the consequences. Why did you come here and implicate others? Lu Zi snorted coldly and said to Jiang Feng, "You are a foundation establishment cultivator, but your performance is worse than a qi refining cultivator." Jiang Feng was furious when he heard that and immediately wanted to break the lightning net with his Dharma artifact. However, when he wanted to take out his Dharma artifact, he realized that his storage ring had been sealed. The only Dharma artifact he had on him was the Spring Breeze umbrella. However, the Spring Breeze umbrella was a support-type Dharma artifact and did not have any attack power. Whoosh! Jiang Feng did not make a move, but his companions did not hesitate to throw a white ball at the lightning net. The white ball exploded with a burst of force, and the lightning net was blasted away in the blink of an eye. Next, Qingchuan controlled the lightning manipulation talisman array to set up a new lightning net. At the same time, the swarm of sandworms had also reached them and surrounded Jiang Feng and the others. Damn it, there's a lightning net in front and sandworms behind. At this time, Jiang Feng's face was extremely gloomy. They were now in a difficult situation. If they could not kill all of these abominable sandworms, then they would really be in danger tonight. "No, we have to drag those 2 bastards down with us," Jiang Feng said to his companions fiercely. "Wu Sun, you go and crash into the lightning net. Go and lure these sandworms over. They must have some way to block these sandworms' perception of them. Mess up their camp. I don't believe that these sandworms can't find them." Hearing Jiang Feng's words, Wu Sun gritted his teeth and said to Jiang Feng, "Got it. I'll go now." Before he even finished speaking, Wu Sun turned around and crashed into the lightning net behind him. Chapter 632. Qingchuan had already expected that Jiang Feng and the others would not give up so easily. However, he did not expect that they would directly charge into the lightning net with their bodies. When he saw Wu Sun rushing over, Qin Chuan's face suddenly darkened. He said coldly, "You want to divert the trouble? Let's see if you have the ability to do so." Crackle. Wu Sun endured the damage from the lightning net and rushed to the front of the camp. He had no intention of attacking Qin Chuan at all. He only wanted to overturn the entire camp and expose Qin Chuan and Lu Zi to the sandworm's vision. He wanted to share some of the pressure for them. Just as Wu Sun was about to attack, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. It changed from the desert camp to a vast expanse of white fog. What is this? An illusion array? Wu Sun was shocked. He subconsciously attacked the original location of the camp. His spiritual power surged into the fog, but it was as if nothing had happened. There was no sound at all. It must be an illusion array. It's just blinding my eyes. Wu Sun gritted his teeth and once again launched an attack at the place where the campsite was supposed to be. This time, he used his trump card. Powerful spiritual energy swept out like a hurricane and destroyed the fog in front of him. However, the fog seemed to be endless. The moment it was destroyed, new fog would appear to fill the gap. Wu Sun seemed to be unaware of this and continued to attack. As long as Wu Sun can overturn the camp, I don't believe that those two can continue to stay out of this. Jiang Feng sneered in his heart, waiting for Wu Sun to bring him good news. However, the good news did not come, and the bad news did not stop. "Wu Sun, you're crazy." Suddenly, there was a burst of exclamation from the crowd. Wu Sun, who was supposed to charge into the lightning net and drag Qin Chuan and Lu Zi into the battlefield, had turned around and attacked his companion. He had severely injured his unprepared companion with one attack. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but widen their eyes in disbelief. Why did Wu Sun suddenly attack his own people? Before the crowd could figure out what was going on, Wu Sun had already launched another attack on the crowd with a ferocious look on his face. This time, he was even more ferocious than before. Everyone hurriedly dodged, but they were attacked and harassed by the sandworms. They were simply unlucky. Looking at the chaotic crowd, Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi curiously and asked, "Your illusion formation can make people go crazy?" Lu Zi smiled and explained, "I just made his sense of direction deviate a little, making him mistakenly think that the two of us are with his companions." Hearing Lu Zi's explanation, Qin Chuan couldn't help but laugh. He said to Lu Zi, "You're really too bad. I was only forced to retaliate." Lu Zi giggled. "If they didn't want to attack us, I wouldn't have done this. Just teach them a lesson. Don't kill them." Qin Chuan glanced at the crowd, not far away, and said to Lu Zi, "Although they're a little bad, they don't deserve to die." "I know." Lu Zi rolled her eyes at Qin Chuan. "We'll follow your arrangements, philanthropist Qin." While Qin Chuan and Lu Zi were chatting, the situation of Jiang Feng and the others could not get any worse. There were sandworms attacking from the front and Wu Sun attacking from the back. Qin Chuan and Lu Zi were watching from the side. Jiang Feng's anger and grievance almost drove him crazy. Just when Jiang Feng thought that he was going to die here today, a tall figure suddenly appeared not far away and approached them at an extremely fast speed. The figure waved her hand and sprinkled some dust on the sandworms. The sandworms seemed to be extremely afraid of the dust and burrowed into the ground together. The sandworms that were originally all over the mountain disappeared in the blink of an eye. However, after the sandworms disappeared, Wu Sun was still crazily attacking everyone. When the figure saw this, she waved her hand again and sprinkled some dust on Wu Sun's body. Wu Sun's figure suddenly froze on the spot and fainted a moment later. He was under the illusion array just now. That's why he attacked randomly. I'll put him to sleep now. When he wakes up, he will naturally return to normal. Jiang Feng and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this. They felt lucky. If this person didn't suddenly appear and save them, they might have killed Wu Sun in order to save themselves. "Thank you so much." Jiang Feng was about to thank the person, but when he saw the person's appearance, he was stunned. He had never seen such a beautiful woman. Not only was Jiang Feng stunned, but everyone standing next to Jiang Feng was also stunned. Just like Jiang Feng, they had never seen such a beautiful woman. What are you looking at? The person looked at Jiang Feng with a subtle gaze and whispered, "Don't you know that it's very impolite to stare at a girl?" Forgive me, forgive me. Jiang Feng quickly apologized when he heard this. It's just that this is the first time I've seen a woman as beautiful as you. I was stunned for a moment. How should I address you, miss? My name is Diwu Qingyan. Not far away, Luzi looked at Diwu Qingyan, who was standing in front of Jiang Feng, and could not help but be surprised. She originally thought that she had seen the most beautiful woman in the world and would not be surprised by other people's appearance. However, Diwu Qingyan's beauty made her envious. What a beautiful woman! Even if she were to be compared to Yi Qingning, who is known as the goddess of Star Dragon, she would not lose out. Luzi sighed and looked at Qin Chuan. When she saw Qin Chuan a daze, she could not help but reach out and grab Qin Chuan's ear. She asked with a smile, "Do you also think that she is very beautiful?" Qin Chuan grinned when he heard this and said to Lu Zi, "She is indeed very beautiful, but what does that have to do with me?" Hearing Qin Chuan's answer, Lu Zi let go of his ear and asked, "Who do you think is more beautiful, her or Yi Qingning? They both have their own merits." Qin Chuan smiled and said to Lu Zi, "All right, there's no more drama to watch. We can continue to rest." "You want to continue to rest, but they might not let you." Lu Zi pouted at the people not far away. "They are coming this way." Qin Chuan glanced at Jiang Feng and the others who were slowly walking over under Diwu Qingyan's lead, and a subtle look flashed in his eyes. He whispered to Lu Zi, "No matter what happens later, don't speak. Let me handle it." "Okay." Lu Zi smiled and held Qin Chuan's arm. She said to Qin Chuan, "Then I'll leave it to you." Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi's hand that was holding his arm and did not know whether to laugh or cry. He did not know what this girl was thinking all day long. Chapter 633. Everyone followed behind Jiang Feng as they looked at Diwu Qingyan in front of them. Someone couldn't help but ask Jiang Feng in a low voice, "Jiang Feng, are we really going to listen to Diwu Qingyan and apologize to those two?" Jiang Feng nodded and said to everyone, "When you apologize later, be more serious and have a better attitude. Don't leave a bad impression on Qingyan." Everyone was speechless when they heard Jiang Feng's words. "You're calling Qingyan just like that? Aren't you being a little too obvious with your thoughts?" Jiang Feng didn't care about the changes in everyone's expressions at all. What he cared about the most right now was Diwu Qingyan, who was standing in front of him. He had to win the favor of this peerless beauty. Diwu Qingyan slowly walked in front of Qin Chuan and Lu Zi. She looked at Qin Chuan and Lu Zi calmly and said, "My two friends, I am Diwu Qingyan." "Diwu?" Qin Chuan raised his eyebrows slightly. "A very special surname." Diwu Qingyan pursed her lips slightly and asked Qin Chuan, "How should I address the two of you?" Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Diwu Qingyan, "I am Lu Chuan. Her name is Qin Zi." Lu Zi, who was standing next to Qin Chuan, rolled her eyes speechlessly when she heard Qin Chuan's introduction. This guy really didn't look like a human at all when he was trying to trick people. Diwu Qingyan nodded lightly and said to Qin Chuan, "I understand what happened just now. Jiang Feng and the others were indeed in the wrong, so I brought them here to apologize to the two of you. I hope you can forgive their mistakes." Yes, we are here to apologize." Jiang Feng chuckled as he walked over and said to Qin Chandu, "Brother, miss, we were a little delirious from the sandworm's attack. That was why we did something that crossed the line. Thanks to Qingyan's reminder, we have realized our mistake. That is why we are here to sincerely apologize to you." As soon as Jiang Feng finished speaking, before Qin Chuan could say anything, Diwu Qingyan frowned slightly and said to Jiang Feng, "Jiang Feng, we have only just met. Please don't call me Qingyan. I'm not used to it." Sorry, it was a slip of the tongue." Jiang Feng smiled awkwardly and said, "I just felt that Miss Diwu and I felt very close to each other. That's why I addressed you so intimately." Hearing Jiang Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan was amused and teased. "Do you think that Miss Diwu looks like your current girlfriend?" Jiang Feng almost could not help but give Qin Chuan a big thumbs up. What he said was absolutely right. No matter how he looked at Diwu Qingyan, he felt that Diwu Qingyan looked like his girlfriend. Of course, he was only imagining it in his heart. He could not say it out loud. Therefore, in the face of Qinchuan's teasing, he could only pretend to be angry and said, "Brother, Misty Wu is a good girl. Don't talk nonsense." "Sorry, I was just joking. Please don't take it to heart." Qinchuan chuckled and said, "All right, now that we've apologized and the matter is over, shouldn't we go do what we should do?" Diwu Qingyan looked at Qinchuan with a subtle gaze and asked, "Now that Jiang Feng has apologized to you, shouldn't you apologize to Jiang Feng and the others?" "We apologize?" Qinchuan looked at Diwu Qingyan with some confusion and asked, "Why should we apologize?" Diwu Qingyan looked at Qinchuan with a serious face and said, "We are all students who came to participate in the examination. It's fine if you don't help others when they are in danger, but why did you deliberately use an illusion array to confuse others and hit them when they are down?" Hearing Diwu Qingyan's words, Qinchuan was a little confused. He had thought of many possibilities, but he never thought that Diwu Qingyan would actually ask him to apologize to Jiang Feng for this reason. Not only was Qinchuan a little confused, even Jiang Feng was confused. He also did not expect Diwu Qingyan to ask Qinchuan to apologize to him. For a moment, Jiang Feng's heart was almost bubbling with happiness. This was the first time he had seen such an understanding and beautiful girl. "Is there something wrong with your expression? Or is there something wrong with my hearing?" Qinchuan looked at Diwu Qingyan with a strange gaze and asked, "Are you the legendary Holy Mother of White Lotus?" Hearing Qinchuan call Diwu Qingyan a Holy Mother of White Lotus, Lu Zi almost could not hold back her laughter. In her opinion, someone like Diwu Qingyan must have not seen much of the world and did not know many people. Otherwise, she would not say such a thing and would not do such a stupid thing. "There is nothing wrong with my expression, and there is nothing wrong with your hearing." Diwu Qingyan looked at Qinchuan with a serious gaze and said, "I think you guys need to apologize to them." "What if I don't apologize?" Qinchuan looked at Diwu Qingyan with a playful gaze and asked, "What are you going to do to me?" Diwu Qingyan shook her head and said earnestly, "I can't do anything to you, but I will try to change you and let you know that what you did was wrong." Hearing Diwu Qingyan's words, Qinchuan felt a headache coming on. He quickly said to Diwu Qingyan, "Don't try to change me. I already know my mistake." Without waiting for Diwu Qingyan to speak again, Qinchuan immediately turned to look at Jiang Feng and said to him, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I sincerely apologize to you. I shouldn't have left you in the lurch. I hope you can forgive me." Seeing Qinchuan, who was very stubborn earlier, apologized to him under Diwu Qingyan's influence, Jiang Feng felt that he was about to die from happiness. He smiled and waved at Qinchuan and said, "It's okay, it's all in the past. There's no need to mention it again." Diwu Qingyan was also very happy when she saw Qinchuan and Jiang Feng shake hands. She smiled at Qinchuan and said, "That's the right thing to do." Qinchuan glanced at Diwu Qingyan and asked, "So, can you guys leave now? My friends and I are going to rest." Diwu Qingyan glanced at Lu Zi, who was standing next to Qinchuan, and nodded gently. "Then we'll meet again if fate allows. I hope you can successfully enter the school. Then I'll count on your blessings." Qinchuan grinned and waved at Diwu Qingyan goodbye. After Diwu Qingyan, Jiang Feng, and the others left, Lu Zi looked at Qinchuan with some confusion and asked, "Why did you apologize to those people?" Qinchuan smiled slightly when he heard this and asked Lu Zi, "Do you think this Diwu Qingyan is really so pure and kind, or is she just pretending?" Hearing Qinchuan's words, Lu Zi was slightly stunned and asked in confusion, "You think there's something wrong with this Diwu Qingyan?" Qinchuan shook his head gently and replied, "I don't know if there's anything wrong with her, but I feel that whether she's pretending or not, I should stay away from her. If I get too close to her, I'll definitely be unlucky." Chapter 634. In the morning, before the sky was completely bright, the temperature in the desert had already begun to rise. Qinchuan and Lu Zi had already tidied up the camp and once again set foot on the road. It was worth mentioning that they had coincidentally met Jiang Feng and the others last night, but they did not see Diwu Qingyan. Looking at Jiang Feng's dazed look, Qin Chuan whispered to Lu Zi, "Did you see him? It's like he's heartbroken. I guess he must have woken up this morning and found that Diwu Qingyan had disappeared. That's why he became like this." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lu Zi looked at Qin Chuan strangely and asked, "How did you know?" Without waiting for Qin Chuan to answer Lu Zi's question, Jiang Feng, who had seen their figures, had already run over and asked anxiously, "Did you two see Miss Diwu this morning? She disappeared early in the morning, and I don't know where she went. I'm worried to death." Hearing Jiang Feng's words, Lu Zi subconsciously looked at Qin Chuan and gave Qin Chuan a thumbs up. "Amazing. You can even guess this?" "Guess what?" Jiang Feng asked anxiously. "Did you guess where Miss Diwu went?" Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Jiang Feng, "I guess Miss Diwu must be in a hurry to get a place in the school as soon as possible, so she set off alone in advance. I believe that as long as you follow the map, you will definitely be able to find her." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Jiang Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. He patted his head in annoyance and said regretfully, "Why didn't this stupid brain of mine think of this before? Thank you for your reminder. I will definitely repay you after I enter the school." Before he finished speaking, Jiang Feng's figure flew forward like an arrow. In order to find Diwu Qingyan as soon as possible, he did not even care about his group of companions. Looking at Jiang Feng's figure flying away, Lu Zi smiled and asked Qin Chuan, "Do you think this Jiang Feng can find Diwu Qingyan?" "That depends on whether Diwu Qingyan is willing to let him find her or not." Qin Chuan smiled. "Let's go, we have to continue our journey." After the first day of the assessment, excluding those who cheated and were disqualified, there were hundreds of people who were eliminated because of the sandworms' attacks at night. Among them, there were a few who almost lost their lives. Jiang Feng and the others' experience was considered relatively good. They were not going to be eliminated. After a night's rest, whoosh, the wind whistled, sweeping up the yellow sand into the sky. Everything in its path was turned into a grayish-yellow color. It was as if there was only grayish-yellow left between heaven and earth. The scene was extremely spectacular. It's one of the 3 natural hazards in the Western Desert, the sandstorm. Seeing the sandstorm in the distance, Lu Zi's expression suddenly became serious. She had checked the information before and knew how terrifying the sandstorm in the Western Desert was. Even a golden core cultivator would be in danger of dying if they accidentally entered it. Qin Chuan glanced at the sandstorm in the distance and deduced, "The sandstorm should reach our current position in 10 minutes. We have to find a way to avoid it." The sandstorm covered an extremely wide area. It was basically impossible for them to escape from the sandstorm's range in 10 minutes. The only thing they could do now was to find a safe place to hide. There is no other way. However, they were in the middle of the desert. At a glance, there was only sand in all directions. There was no place to hide at all. After a moment of thought, Qin Chuan looked down and said in a deep voice, "Underground is our only way out. We can only escape the sandstorm by burrowing into the ground." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lu Zi immediately said, "But there are sandworms underground." Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi with a serious gaze and said firmly, "Sandworms or sandstorm? If you had to choose between them, which would you choose?" Hearing Qin Chuan's question, Lu Zi knew that she had no choice. If they chose to face the sandworms, they would still have the initiative. However, if they chose to face the sandstorm, they could only resign themselves to fate. Seeing that Lu Zi did not speak, Qin Chuan already knew what Lu Zi's choice was. Without hesitation, he pulled out the Thunder Wind Sword from his waist and stabbed it into the sand on the ground. The spiritual energy in his body surged into the Thunder Wind Sword and turned into sword energy that rushed into the ground. Then it suddenly exploded. Boom! The sword energy exploded and dug a large hole in the ground. However, this was still not enough for them. Qin Chuan stabbed the sword into the ground again and used the sword energy to dig deep into the ground. Walala! With a series of walala sounds, a dark hole appeared in front of Qin Chuan. Seeing this hole, Qin Chuan was slightly stunned. Just as he was about to say something, Lu Zi, who was standing above, suddenly exclaimed, "Qin Chuan, the sandstorm is accelerating. It will be here soon." Hearing Lu Zi shout, Qin Chuan's face immediately became gloomy. He no longer hesitated and shouted at Lu Zi, "Come down quickly." As he spoke, Qin Chuan had already inscribed the thunder manipulation charm array and set up a thunder net around him. After Lu Zi jumped down, the net enveloped the two of them. Then, he pulled Lu Zi and jumped into the black hole together. The moment they entered the hole, Qin Chuan saw a dense swarm of sandworms in front of him. These sandworms crazily attacked the thunder net. If Qin Chuan had not used his spiritual energy to maintain the consumption of the thunder net, they would have been drowned by the sandworms. Damn it! Did we enter the nest of the sandworms? Qin Chuan frowned. At the same time, the sandworms around them had been cleaned up. He could finally see the surroundings clearly. Looking at the simple and old buildings, Qin Chuan was a little surprised. They actually entered an underground ruin buried by the desert. This should be an underground ruin. After the sandworms discovered it, they used it as their stronghold. Lu Zi looked at the surrounding buildings and said to Qin Chuan, 2 days ago, I read some information about the Western Desert. It said that 10,000 years ago, there was a very small country called Gulen in the Western Desert. Maybe this is the ruins of Gulen. Qin Chuan nodded gently and said, let's be careful. Maybe there are other things here besides the sandworms. Chapter 635. Qin Chuan and Lu Zi did not know much about Gulen. They only guessed that this place might be the ruins of Gulen. After some exploration, they found that this place was a relatively closed room. The exit had been blocked by the sandstorm, but there were many fist-sized holes in the wall. They should have been made by sandworms. We had just killed all the sandworms here. It is safe for the time being. Qin Chuan whispered to Lu Zi, let's stay here for the time being. We will go out after the sandstorm passes. Lu Zi nodded. Although they were deep underground at this time, they could still hear the rumbling of the wind on the ground. It was as loud as the bombardment of artillery shells. I really didn't expect to encounter a sandstorm. Lu Zi said to Qin Chuan helplessly, sandstorms rarely appear in the Western Desert, but every time a sandstorm appears, its destructive power is extremely strong and terrifying. Even a spacecraft does not dare to enter it easily. Qin Chuan smiled and said to Lu Zi, the sandstorm will pass sooner or later. What I am more worried about now is that the sandworms will find our tracks. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lu Zi subconsciously looked at the holes in the blocked wall not far away. If there was a place where the sandworms could find them, it must be these holes. Why don't we block these holes? Lu Zi suggested to Qin Chuan. Then the sandworms can't get in. Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi with a strange look and asked, if we block all the holes, where will the air come from? Besides, sandworms are best at drilling holes. If we block these holes, they can still drill new holes. Lu Zi had a headache. Their current situation reminded her of Jiang Feng and the others last night. There were sandworms in front and behind them, and a sandstorm. This situation was simply too awkward. Seeing the conflicted look on Lu Zi's face, Qin Chuan smiled and took out something from his backpack. He said to Lu Zi, but don't worry too much. After all, we have this thing. Looking at the black ball in Qin Chuan's hand, Lu Zi's eyes suddenly lit up. She said in surprise, how could I forget about this thing? With the blocker, we don't have to worry about the sandworms anymore. Qin Chuan got up and walked to the side of the holes, opened the blocker, and then placed it. He clapped his hands and said to Lu Zi, put the blocker on the path of the sandworms. They shouldn't be able to come in again. Just as Qin Chuan finished everything and was about to return to Lu Zi's side, the ground suddenly rumbled and trembled. There was a faint sound coming from the hole. Qin Chuan turned around and looked at the hole behind him. He frowned slightly and whispered, it shouldn't be an earthquake. What was that sound just now? Qin Chuan, what's wrong? Lu Zi saw Qin Chuan standing still and walked over with a puzzled look. She asked, what's going on? Qin Chuan turned around and looked at Lu Zi. He asked, "Did you feel the ground tremble just now? And then you heard some strange sounds?" Lucy looked puzzled. She asked, "Was there an earthquake and strange sound just now? Why didn't I feel anything?" Hearing Lucy's answer, Qin Chuan was about to speak when the ground under his feet suddenly trembled again. At the same time, a very low sound came from the hole again. Compared to before, the ground trembled more violently and the sound was clearer. However, Lucy still didn't feel anything. It was as if she and Qin Chuan were in a different space. After realizing that Lucy still didn't feel anything, Qin Chuan couldn't help but look at the blocked passage behind him with a puzzled look. He had a hunch that as long as he could get through here, he would be able to find out what was going on here. Just as Qin Chuan was hesitating on whether to do so, the blocked passage suddenly trembled violently, and a large amount of sand fell down. This time, LVZ finally sensed the abnormality, and a look of bewilderment appeared on her face. She said to Qin Chuan, "It seems like something is colliding with this place. Let's retreat." Qin Chuan and Lu Zi left the blocked passage and retreated. At the same time, a low sound came from the hole again. "I heard it. Is it the cry of some kind of creature?" This time, Lu Zi finally heard the special sound that Qin Chuan mentioned. She was sure that it must be the cry of some kind of creature. Maybe it was the thing that was crashing into the blocked passage. Before knowing the specific situation, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi didn't dare to act rashly. At this time, this slightly closed room could be said to be the only place they could stay. There was a sandstorm outside and sandworms inside. If this unknown creature crashed into the passage at this time, their situation would become very bad. Dong dong dong. The continuous collision caused a large number of cracks to appear in the blocked passage. The hard sand also became loose and scattered all over the ground. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before the passage would be completely smashed open. Boom! The moment the passage was smashed open, a huge yellowish-brown, oval-shaped thing rushed into the room. Qin Chuan and Lu Zi couldn't help but widen their eyes when they saw this thing. It was a giant sandworm. Hiss! The giant sandworm opened its ferocious mouth and screamed at Qin Chuan and Lu Zi. Its huge body suddenly rushed forward, and the huge force almost destroyed the entire room. Lightning Manipulation Talisman Array. Qin Chuan no longer hesitated and immediately inscribed the Lightning Manipulation Talisman Array. The Lightning Manipulation Talisman Array turned the Lightning Manipulation Talisman Array into a sharp sword and stabbed straight at the giant sandworm in front of him. However, the sharp sword failed to pierce the giant sandworm's skin. Instead, it was bounced back. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan immediately turned the sharp sword into a lightning net and enveloped the giant sandworm's head. However, the Lightning Manipulation Talisman Array seemed to have lost its lethality under the giant sandworm's rough skin. It didn't have any effect on the giant sandworm. "This thing's defense is too strong," Qin Chuan said in a deep voice. "I can't break through it." "Its mouth," Lu Zi said to Qin Chuan. "Attack its body through its mouth." The moment Lu Zi's voice fell, the giant sandworm opened its mouth again and roared. Qin Chuan didn't hesitate when he saw this. He immediately used the sword manipulation technique to control the wind thunder sword to stab straight at the sandworm's mouth. Before the sandworm closed its mouth, the sword pierced into its body. Then, with a sudden stir, the insides of the sandworm's body were turned upside down. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The sandworm let out a painful wail. Some dark brown liquid flowed out of its mouth. Its aura was also extremely weak at this moment. Chapter 636. Seeing that the giant sandworm was severely injured, Qin Chuan let out a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he felt a bit of heartache. This was because he could feel that his connection with the wind sword was rapidly weakening. The liquid inside this sandworm's body is extremely corrosive. It even corroded my wind sword. Qin Chuan looked at the giant sandworm in front of him with a serious expression. He felt a lingering fear in his heart. If the sandworm had been smart enough to spit out the liquid inside its body at him and Lu Zi, they would be in a very bad situation right now. How can there be such a disgusting thing underground? Lu Zi frowned as she looked at the giant sandworm that was gradually dying. She said to Qin Chuan, "The smell on its body is too disgusting. Burn it." Qin Chuan tried to ignite the fire of God. Surprisingly, he succeeded on his first try. He casually threw the fire of God onto the giant sandworm's body. The extremely tough skin of the sandworm was instantly burned into nothingness by the fire of God. Seeing this scene, Lu Zi was a little surprised. What a powerful fire! Under the gaze of Qin Chuan and Lu Zi, the fire of God burned the giant sandworm's body to ashes in just a few moments. The air in the room also became a lot fresher. Qin Chuan looked at the hole that was created by the giant sandworm and said to Lu Zi, "Let's go out and see what's going on." Lu Zi looked at the bottomless hole and said to Qin Chuan, "Be careful." Qin Chuan nodded, got up, and slowly walked towards the hole. He stood at the hole and observed for a while. After making sure that there was no danger, he waved at Lu Zi and signaled for her to follow him. Lu Zi followed behind Qin Chuan. She said to Qin Chuan, "I can use the illusion formation to hide. Why don't you let me walk in front?" After hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan hesitated for a moment. In the end, he nodded and said to Lu Zi, "Be careful. If you encounter any danger, retreat. Don't force yourself." Lu Zi's figure slowly became transparent and merged with the surroundings. Even if Qin Chuan was standing next to her, he could not see Lu Zi's existence with the naked eye. Her aura had almost completely disappeared. After preparing, Lu Zi slowly walked into the hole. After about 3 to 4 seconds, Qin Chuan followed. The two walked through a passage and came to an empty hall. There were some rustling sounds in the hall. It was the movement of some sandworms. Qin Chuan looked at the situation in the hall and slightly raised his eyebrows. He muttered, "There aren't many sandworms in the hall, and many of them are dead. Maybe they were squashed to death by that giant sandworm." The situation in the hall made Qin Chuan puzzled. Even if some of the sandworms were squashed to death by the giant sandworm, there were still too few sandworms in the hall. There were even fewer sandworms in the small room they were in. This was not right. Just as Qin Chuan was puzzled, Lu Zi, who was walking in front, quietly retreated. She came to Qin Chuan's side and whispered to Qin Chuan, "The sandworms outside are all hanging upside down from the ceiling." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan was shocked. He subconsciously looked up and saw a dense swarm of sandworms. So many. Qin Chuan could not help but exclaim. The number of sandworms in the hall had completely exceeded Qin Chuan's expectations. There were at least 10,000 of them. I was also shocked by the number of sandworms. "Let's not go out," Lu Zi said to Qin Chuan with some worry. "If we disturb those sandworms, we might be in danger." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan nodded and said to Lu Zi, "Let's go back. We can't stay outside." Just as Qin Chuan and Lu Zi were about to retreat, a low cry suddenly came from the hall. Hearing this slightly familiar cry, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi's expressions suddenly changed. They subconsciously turned to look outside and saw a giant sandworm suddenly burrowing out of the hall and rushing toward them with great purpose. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan could not help but curse. F***CK? Why is there another one? Before LVZ could finish her sentence, the giant sandworm had already arrived in front of them and slammed into them. Under the powerful impact, the two of them were sent flying back into the room. Before they could stabilize themselves, the giant sandworm rushed in after them. However, most of its body was stuck outside the room. The giant sandworm roared and tried its best to rush into the room. Its ferocious mouth was wide open, as if it wanted to swallow Qin Chuan into its stomach. Seeing this scene, Lu Zi endured the pain and asked Qin Chuan, "Is there something on you that's attracting these giant sandworms?" Qin Chuan hurriedly tossed his backpack to the side. However, the giant sandworms were still locked onto him. This made Qin Chuan realize that it wasn't something on him that was attracting the giant sandworms. It was him that was attracting the giant sandworms. What the hell is going on? Qin could not figure out. Could it be that these giant sandworms were targeting him because of his bloodline? Just as Qin was thinking about this question, the little armored dragon that had been sleeping on his monster core in his brain suddenly woke up. It flew up shakily and arrived in front of Qin in a flash. Qin was slightly stunned when he saw the little armored dragon that had suddenly appeared before him. Before he could react to the situation, the little armored dragon had already charged towards the enormous sandworm like a bolt of lightning, and its figure vanished with a swoosh. After that, the enormous sandworm wailed, and its body suddenly shriveled up. In practically the blink of an eye, it had become shriveled up to the point only a layer of skin remained. Seeing this scene, Qin and Lu Zi were stunned. No one expected this to happen. Under the shocked gazes of Qin and Lu Zi, the little armored dragon flew out from under the giant sandworm's skin and slowly returned to Qin. Looking at the little armored dragon in front of him, Qin said with some disbelief, "These giant sandworms came because of you?" The little armored dragon seemed to understand Qin's words and showed an embarrassed expression on its silly face. At this time, Qin was even more surprised to find that the little armored dragon's head was no longer in the shape of a beetle, but in the shape of a human. Moreover, its appearance was actually somewhat similar to his. What the hell is going on? Qin felt that his brain was not enough. He completely did not understand what was going on. Lu Zi walked over slowly and looked at the little armored dragon flying in front of Qin. She could not help but show a hint of hesitation on her face. After hesitating for a while, she asked Qin, "This unique little thing, is it your son?" Chapter 637. Son? Qin looked at Lu Zi strangely and asked, "Do you think I would give birth to such a little thing? But this little thing looks too much like you." Lu Zi said in all seriousness, "The nose and the eyes are the same." Qin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at the little armored dragon that was swaying around like it was drunk and asked curiously, "What's going on with you? Why are those sandworms coming at you? And why do they look so aggressive?" As if it understood Qin's words, the little armored dragon showed an aggrieved expression and spread its hands, as if to say that it was innocent and that it didn't know why. Qin saw the little armored dragon's response and asked again, "Then why did you suddenly appear just now? And how did you kill this giant sandworm in an instant?" As he spoke, Qin couldn't help but look at the giant sandworm's corpse again. He really wanted to know how the little armored dragon sucked such a giant sandworm dry in such a short time. Not only was it terrifying, but it was also a little disgusting. Faced with Qin's question, the little armored dragon was a little embarrassed and didn't know how to answer. After a while, it raised its hand and rubbed its little belly, and then its stomach actually made a rumbling sound. Hearing this, Qin and Lu Zi looked at each other and saw a hint of astonishment in each other's eyes. Qin looked at the little armored dragon strangely and asked uncertainly, "Little armored dragon, don't tell me you killed that big guy because you were hungry?" The little armored dragon nodded lightly when it heard Qin's words, and its stomach started rumbling again. At the same time, the unique, low growl of the giant sandworm came from outside again. Hearing the commotion outside, Qin looked at the excited little armored dragon and whispered to Lu Zi, "Why do I feel that the little armored dragon deliberately lured these giant sandworms here to be its lunch?" Lu Zi nodded in agreement and said, "I have the same feeling too. The little armored dragon looks silly, but I feel that it's very smart. Speaking of which, where did you get this little armored dragon?" Qin smiled bitterly and said to Lu Zi, "It's a long story, but the little armored dragon should be harmless to us. But it's eating worms." Lu Zi looked at the little armored dragon's little body with a complicated expression and said to Qin, "Can you let it eat something else? Why does such a cute little guy have to eat worms?" Qin thought for a moment and said to Lu Zi, "Maybe it's because the giant sandworm's body has the nutrients it needs." While Qin and Lu Zi were talking, the little armored dragon had already flown out and killed the third giant sandworm. After eating its fill, the little armored dragon was still not satisfied and summoned another giant sandworm. Hearing the commotion outside, Qin Xuan and Lu Zi did not know what happened. After about 10 minutes, the little armored dragon came back with a round belly and a satisfied expression on its face. It seemed that it was very full. The little armored dragon gave Qin Xuan and Lu Zi a silly smile. Then its figure flashed and once again rushed into Qin Xuan's mind. It laid on top of Qin Xuan's Yao Dan and began to sleep. Lu Zi saw this and asked Qin Xuan curiously, "Where's the little armored dragon? How did it disappear?" Qin Xuan pointed to his head and said to Lu Zi, "It's in here." Lu Zi was shocked when she heard this and quickly asked, "Won't it be dangerous? What if it's hungry and eats you?" Qin Xuan looked at Lu Zi strangely and shook his head. "Don't worry, such a thing won't happen." Seeing Qin Xuan said so confidently, Lu Zi did not ask anymore. Since Qin Xuan said so, then he must be confident. If the little armored dragon was really a threat to Qin Xuan, then the two of them would not be able to get along peacefully until now. The wind outside seems to have stopped. Lu Zi looked up and said to Qin Xuan, "Has the sandstorm passed?" When Qin Xuan heard this, he immediately focused and listened carefully to the movements outside. Indeed, there was no sound of wind anymore. He thought for a moment and said to LVZ, "I'll go up and take a look at the situation first. Let's go together. If there's danger, we can take care of each other." Lu Zi was not at ease with Qin Xuan going up alone and wanted to go up with Qin Xuan. Qin Xuan did not refuse. After finding the place where they fell, Qin Xuan rushed up with sword chi and broke through the hole that was covered up again. A large amount of sand poured down, revealing a hole that led to the outside world. Sunlight shone in and fell on Qin Xuan and Lu Zi. The familiar burning sensation returned once again. Sure enough, there's no wind outside. A look of excitement appeared on Qin Xuan's face. He immediately exerted strength in his legs and leaped up, rushing out of the cave. LVZ followed closely behind. The two of them landed on the ground outside, looking at the already calm desert, and they both smiled. Compared to staying in the dark underground and being accompanied by sandworms, they were more willing to be exposed to the sun outside. The sandstorm has changed the terrain. Qin Xuan looked at the surrounding environment and asked Lu Zi, "Can you still tell the direction?" "Let's not talk about the direction first." Lu Zi pointed at something not far away and said to Qin Xuan, "Qin Xuan, take a look at what that is." Hearing this, Qin Xuan looked in the direction Lu Zi pointed. When he saw the appearance of the thing, his face suddenly became a little ugly. The person lying on the ground was actually a dried corpse. He should have died in the sandstorm. Also, look, his body seems to be filled with sand. Lu Zi looked at the corpse in front of her with a lingering fear and said to Qin Xuan, "I would rather be killed by a knife than die in a sandstorm with my body filled with sand. No one would like to die like this. It's too torturous." Qin Xuan sighed and said to Lu Zi, "Don't look anymore. Let's continue on our way." Just as Qin Xuan and Lu Zi were about to determine the direction and continue on their way, their optical computers suddenly lit up. The Tianhai Special Training Camp sent another message. Due to the sandstorm, most of the students participating in the assessment have lost contact. Students who are out of danger, please contact us urgently for help. Seeing the message from the Tianhai Special Training Camp, Qin Xuan pursed his lips slightly and said to Lu Zi, "Perhaps many people will die this time. When the time comes, the Tianhai Special Training Camp might have to bear some of the responsibility." At this point, Qin Xuan suddenly stopped. This was because he remembered that they had signed a life and death agreement before they set off. If someone who did not voluntarily withdraw from the assessment during the assessment met with an accidental death, the Tianhai Special Training Camp would not bear any responsibility. Chapter 638. After a day's worth of statistics, we regret to inform you that a total of 126 people were killed in the sandstorm, 284 are missing, and 197 have withdrawn from the assessment due to serious injuries. We hope that those who are still participating in the assessment can protect themselves. If you encounter any danger, please withdraw from the assessment immediately. Staff will escort you out of the Western Wasteland. When he saw the news from the Sky Sea Special Training Camp, Qin Chuan's expression couldn't help but become extremely shocked. Although he had expected many people to die in this sandstorm, he didn't expect so many to die. There were even nearly 300 people whose whereabouts were unknown. In such a desolate desert, if you go missing, it basically means you're dead. Lu Zi sighed. Now, we just need to find their bodies and confirm their identities. At this moment, Lu Zi was really glad that Qin Chuan was with her. If she had participated in the assessment alone, it would have been very difficult for her to make the correct decision to avoid the danger brought by the sandstorm. She might have ended up like the others, either dead or missing. Qin Chuan nodded lightly and said to Lu Zi, "No matter what, we have to live well and do our best to survive until the end. Let's go. Let's continue on our way." Originally, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi would occasionally run into one or two people who were traveling with them. But as they gradually ventured deeper into the Western Wasteland, they often did not even see a shadow of a ghost, much less a person. This was already the fourth day that Qin Chuan and Lu Zi had ventured into the Western Wasteland. There were still 2 days until the end of the assessment. At this time, apart from receiving news from the Sky Sea Special Training Camp, they had completely lost contact with the outside world. They did not know if anyone had already completed the assessment and successfully become a member of the Sky Sea Special Training Camp. They also did not know how many people were working hard behind them, nor did they know how many people had already chosen to give up. Lu Zi was very glad that she was able to travel together with Qin Chuan. If she had to walk alone in this endless desert, perhaps her spirit would have already collapsed. How much longer until we reach the Tianhai Special Training Camp? Lu Zi looked at the desert in front of her with a slightly anxious gaze. How long have we been walking? After staying in the desert for so long, Lu Zi had completely lost the concept of time. She only knew that she had to hurry on with her journey when the sun rose and find a place to hide from the sandworms when the sun set. It had only been 4 days since the desert, but in Lu Zi's mind, it felt like a year had passed. Qin Chuan could understand Lu Zi's situation. Even he could not hold on any longer. Physical exhaustion was not the scariest thing. The scariest thing was mental exhaustion and despair. Hold on a little longer. Trust me, we will definitely reach our destination before nightfall. Qin Chuan gripped Lu Zi's hand tightly. Looking at Lu Zi's pale face, he said seriously, "Don't abandon, don't give up. We will walk to the end together." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lu Zi gritted her teeth fiercely. Her voice was weak but firm. "We will walk to the end together." When the sky gradually darkened, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi tacitly began to look for a place to shelter from the wind. At this moment, a small wooden sign attracted Lu Zi's attention. Lu Zi picked up the wooden sign that had fallen to the ground. Looking at the blurry words on it, she read in a low voice, 10,000 meters ahead. Tianhai, Special Training Camp. Seeing these words, LVZ's eyes suddenly burst with an extremely bright light, and she cheered. Tianhai Special Training Camp. We're here, right in front. Not far away. Qin Chuan heard Lu Zi shout and immediately ran over. He looked at himself on the wooden sign and said excitedly to Lu Zi, "Only 10,000 meters left. We will definitely be able to walk there tonight. Let's do it in one go. We will rest when we reach the special training camp." Lu Zi looked at Qin Chuan. "It's the last 10,000 meters. We have to finish it no matter what." Qin Chuan nodded vigorously and said to Lu Zi, "No matter how many sandworms block our way tonight, we will kill our way through." The excited Qin Chuan and Lu Zi stepped on the road forward without any hesitation. Taking advantage of the fact that the night had not completely fallen, they walked 1,000 meters in just a moment. At this time, the temperature in the desert had gradually dropped. The sandworms that had rested underground for an entire day finally came out of the ground and began to move. The two living people, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi, became the fattest food in the eyes of the sandworms. Thunder Manipulation Charm Array, activate. Qin Xuan roared angrily and used the thunder manipulation charm array to form a thunder net that enveloped the sandworms around them. Countless sandworms were killed the moment they touched the thunder net. However, even though the corpses of their companions kept falling, the sandworms still charged toward Qin Xuan and Lu Zi fearlessly. Gradually, the defense of the thunder manipulation charm array showed a loophole. "Help me buy some time," Qin Xuan said to Lu Zi in a deep voice. "I want to inscribe the 5 elements rotation charm array combination." Lu Zi nodded and said to Qin Xuan, "Leave it to me." Although Lu Zi was not good at frontal combat, her attainments in illusion arrays were far beyond ordinary people. It was easy to use illusion arrays to confuse these sandworms that did not have much intelligence and only relied on their instincts to move. "Purple Star Divine Eye," Lu Zi roared, and her bright eyes gradually turned into a deep purple color. A purple eyeball appeared on top of her head, emitting a charming purple light. The sandworms nearby stopped charging under the illumination of this purple light, and then they turned around and charged at their companions behind them, fighting with their companions. As time passed, more and more sandworms were charmed by the light of the purple star divine eye and became the most loyal guards around Qin Xuan and Lu Zi. They guarded every inch of space around Qin Xuan and Lu Zi, and no enemy could cross their line of defense. Just as these sandworms and their companions were fighting enthusiastically, Qin Xuan pursed his lips and said to Lu Zi, "Thank you for your hard work. Leave the rest to me." Lu Zi looked back at the huge array combination beside Qin Xuan and smiled. "Then I'll leave it to you." "Wild Sand," Qin Xuan roared angrily, and one of the 5 elements rotation charm array combination in front of him suddenly shone brightly. The sand in all directions surged wildly under the influence of this charm array, swallowing the surrounding sandworms like a wave. In the blink of an eye, the area around Qin Xuan and Lu Zi was cleared clean. Not only that, Qin Xuan even borrowed the force of the sea of sand to lift himself and Lu Zi forward quickly, teleporting 1,000 meters. Chapter 639. With the help of the sea of sand, Qin Xuan and Lu Zi crossed the distance of 10,000 meters in just a few breaths. They saw the huge steel camp standing in the middle of the desert. "Tianhai Special Training Camp, we've arrived." Lu Zi looked at the tall walls of the camp and said excitedly to Qin Xuan, "We did it." Qin Xuan nodded his head heavily when he heard this. He was also very excited as he said, "The assessment is finally over." Just as Qin Xuan and Lu Zi were about to rush to the front of the camp, 2 figures suddenly descended from the sky and blocked their path. "Who are you?" Looking at the 2 cultivators wrapped in armor, Qin Xuan immediately shouted, "We are students participating in the entrance examination. This is our identification." Lu Zi immediately threw her and Qin Xuan's identification to the 2 cultivators in front of them. One of the cultivators reached out and took the identification. After confirming that there was no mistake, he said to Qin Xuan and Lu Zi, "Students Qin Xuan and Lu Zi, congratulations. You are the 17th and 18th students who have completed the examination." Hearing the other party's words, Qin Xuan and Lu Zi were shocked. They couldn't help but look at each other. They were actually 17th and 18th? This was too far behind. "Seniors, may I know if we can enter the special training camp?" Qin Xuan looked at the 2 people in front of him. "We have traveled a long way and are very tired." "Of course you can." The cultivator patrolling the special training camp chuckled and said to Qin Xuan, "You can go. When the time comes, there will naturally be someone to receive you." After thanking the 2 cultivators, Qin Xuan and Lu Zi landed on the ground and walked toward the gate of the special training camp. When they were far away, Lu Zi whispered to Qin Xuan, "That's too exaggerated. Our speed is already very fast, but we're only 17th and 18th. Qin Xuan nodded lightly and said to Lu Zi, "In my estimation, I thought we would at least be in the top 5. I didn't expect the reality to be so different from my estimation." Originally, Qin Chuan thought he was already standing at the peak of the Star Dragon Federation's younger generation. However, this special training camp examination made Qin Chuan realize that he was still far from the true peak. Lu Zi said to Qin Chuan with some anticipation, "I can't wait to see who got here faster than us. I'm really looking forward to it." Qin Chuan asked curiously, "What are you looking forward to?" "Of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you defeat them one by one in the training camp." Lu Zi smiled. "Don't tell me you don't have the confidence?" Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Aren't your expectations of me a little too high?" "I never thought I had high expectations of you, because in my heart, you've always been the strongest." Lu Zi smiled. "Don't let me down." Looking at the gate of the special training camp in front of him, Qin Chuan was also full of anticipation for the next month of special training camp life. "Welcome to the Sky Sea Special Training Camp. I'm your personal butler. My code name is Wasp." A middle-aged man in a black suit stood in front of Qin Chuan and Lu Zi with a smile, politely introducing himself. Qin Chuan looked at Wasp and asked curiously, "Does the Sky Sea Special Training Camp still need a butler?" "Yes." Wasp explained to Qin Chuan, "The two of you will need to replenish your energy after training, including the cleaning and maintenance of your armor. I'm the person in charge of solving these problems for you. All you need to do is put all your energy into your studies." Hearing Wasp's words, Qin Chuan looked at the closed gate of the special training camp and asked curiously, "What's it like inside the special training camp? My description might not be accurate enough. Why don't I show you around the special training camp?" Wasp smiled, took out 2 brooches, and handed them to Qin Chuan and LVZ. He said to the two of them, "This is the identification of a student in the special training camp. It is also the proof of entry and exit. Please wear on your chest, and don't lose it." Qin Chuan looked at the number 17 on the brooch and smiled gently. Then, he put the brooch on his chest and walked to the door of the special training camp. After the electronic scan confirmed his identity, the door of the special training camp slowly opened. At the same time, an extremely gentle female voice sounded. "Welcome student Qin Chuan to the Sky Sea Special Training Camp." The moment Qin Chuan walked through the gate of the Sky Sea Special Training Camp, he felt as if he had gone from a hot stove into a garden that was like spring all year round. From head to toe, he felt incomparably comfortable, both mentally and physically. Lu Zi, who was walking beside Qin Chuan, had already closed her eyes, a look of enjoyment on her face. She whispered to Qin Chuan, "It's so comfortable here. I'm about to fall asleep." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan chuckled. "In any case, let's go back to our room and sleep. It's so awkward to sleep on the streets." Wasp, who was following behind them, immediately said, "If the two of you feel a little tired and want to rest, I can take you to rest first. There are still 2 days until the end of the assessment. We can wait until tomorrow to enjoy the scenery of the Sky Sea Special Training Camp. Then let's go and rest first." Lu Zi looked at Qin Chuan and said, "I'm really about to fall asleep." Although she had been resting at night for the past few days, she had not rested well. Moreover, she had just finished a long day of traveling and had just gone through a battle. Right now, she really had no interest in strolling around. She just wanted to lie down on a comfortable bed and have a good night's sleep. "The two of you, please follow me." Under Wasp's lead, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi arrived at the accommodation arranged for them by the Sky Sea Special Training Camp. It was a separate villa with an elegant environment. "The two of you, I'll send you here. The villa has everything you need. It can definitely satisfy any of your needs. I'll be here tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock sharp to continue serving you." Wasp smiled and said to the two goodbye. "I wish you a wonderful night." Qin Chuan and Lu Zi thanked Wasp and walked into the villa. Just as Wasp said, the villa had everything they needed. A small training room, a dining room, a medical room, and all sorts of other facilities were complete. It could completely satisfy their daily needs and training needs. After a simple tour, Qin Chuan discovered a very serious problem. Looking at the bedroom door in front of him, Qin Chuan's face was full of question marks. Why did he only see one bedroom in the entire villa? How were he and Lu Zi going to split it? Chapter 640. The next morning, Qingchuan woke up at 7 o'clock sharp. He wanted to sit up and stretch, but Lu Zi, who was lying on top of him like an octopus, stopped him. Looking at Lu Zi, who was sleeping soundly in her thin pajamas, Qingchuan shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Why didn't you sleep on the bed? Why are you sleeping on the floor?" After discovering that there was only one bedroom and one bed in the villa last night, Qingchuan originally planned to sleep in the living room for the night. Later, under Lu Zi's persuasion, he slept on the floor of the bedroom. However, to his surprise, while he was sleeping soundly on the floor, Lu Zi actually rolled off the bed and lay on top of him. She didn't move for the whole night. Hearing Qingchuan's words, Lu Zi twisted her body and adjusted to a comfortable sleeping position. Then, she closed her eyes and muttered, "Don't talk. Let me sleep for a while more. Just 10 minutes." Qingchuan was a little helpless. He could only lie back down and quietly began to think about what to do in the next month. The Sky Sea Special Training Camp is the most famous and outstanding training camp in the entire Star Dragon Federation. Now that I've become a student here after going through so much hardship, I have to learn something from here. Besides becoming an EXO, I have to advance to the Gold Course stage. That's right. Qingchuan came to the Sky Sea Special Training Camp this time to not only learn to become an EXO, but also to break through his current level and advance to the Gold Course stage. The more things he experienced in the cultivation world, the more Qingchuan knew about himself. The more he knew how weak he was, the more he desired to become stronger. Only with enough strength could he do what he wanted to do. "What are you thinking about?" Lu Zi lay on Qingchuan's chest and looked at Qingchuan's face gently. She seemed to be in a good mood. Qingchuan smiled and said to Lu Zi, "I'm wondering when you'll be willing to get up. You're about to crush me to death." Hearing Qingchuan's words, Lu Zi's face turned slightly red. She asked in a low voice, "Is it big or not?" Hearing this, Qingchuan looked at Lu Zi subtly. He asked in a low voice, "Are you seducing me?" "Yes, but unfortunately, you're an unromantic blockhead." LVZ looked at Qingchuan. "I know you have someone you like, but I'm still doing this. Do you think I'm slutty?" "Why do you think so?" Qingchuan looked at Lu Zi and smiled. "In my heart, you've always been a good girl with a gentle personality." "Stop, stop, stop." Lu Zi sat up and held Qingchuan's chest. She looked unhappy and said, "I don't want to hear you say this. Forget it. I won't make things difficult for you. Get up." Lu Zi stood up from Qingchuan's body and walked to the side to take her clothes to wash up. She looked back at Qingchuan and found that Qingchuan was still sitting on the ground. He had no intention of getting up. She couldn't help but ask in confusion, "What are you doing? Why aren't you getting up?" Qingchuan smiled awkwardly and responded, "I'm a little dizzy. I'll sit for a while before getting up." Hearing Qingchuan's answer, Lu Zi's face showed a touch of suspicion. Then, she seemed to think of something. Her eyes couldn't help but move down from Qingchuan's face to Qingchuan's lower abdomen. She immediately showed a naughty smile and said to Qingchuan, "Then you take your time. I'll go wash up and get ready." Qingchuan looked at Lu Zi's back as she walked into the bathroom. He couldn't help but show a bitter smile on his face and whispered, "Really? Don't you know how beautiful and how good your body is? Seducing me like this, I'm not a saint." Just as Qingchuan was whispering, Lu Zi suddenly poked her small head out of the bathroom. She looked at Qingchuan with a smile and asked, "What were you mumbling to yourself just now?" Qingchuan was shocked by Lu Zi's sudden turn of events. He quickly said, "I didn't say anything." Seeing Qingchuan's guilty expression, Lu Zi giggled. "Hurry up and get up. We still have to visit this special training camp today and get to know the other students." Qingchuan saw Lu Zi shrink back and couldn't help but say helplessly, "This is too tiring." After washing up, Qingchuan and Lu Zi dressed neatly and walked out of the villa. Seeing Wasp standing at the door, Qingchuan smiled and said, "We'll have to trouble Butler Huang today." "It's no trouble. This is what I should do. After all, you have to pay too." Wasp chuckled. "The fee you pay includes the butler's service fee." Lu Zi was slightly taken aback by Wasp's words. "There's such a thing?" "Yes, but this fee isn't necessary. You can choose not to pay," Wasp said with a smile. But then I won't be able to show you the scenery of the special training camp. Let's continue to trouble Butler Huang. Qin Chuan smiled and said to Wasp, "Why don't we pay first?" "Okay, please follow me." Wasp walked in front while Qin Chuan and Lu Zi followed behind. As they walked, they casually enjoyed the scenery around them. It had to be said that the scenery of Tianhai Special Training Camp was much more beautiful than they had imagined. If I hadn't seen the outside of Tianhai Special Training Camp before, I would have thought that we were in a city with beautiful scenery. Qin Chuan smiled and said to Lu Zi, "Originally, I thought that Tianhai Special Training Camp would be a training base made entirely of steel." Wasp, who was walking in front, smiled and explained to Qin Chuan, "At first, Tianhai Special Training Camp was indeed a steel base. From the inside to the outside, everything was made of steel. After a period of practical use, we realized that a base made purely of steel was not beneficial for the students to adjust their physical and mental states. It would cause their learning efficiency to drop greatly. Therefore, we carried out a large-scale modification of the base. Other than the special training camp, which was left intact, the rest of the place underwent a large-scale modification and became the city garden we see now." Qin Chuan nodded lightly after hearing Wasp's explanation. "Indeed, after going through tough training, if you keep facing cold steel buildings, you will feel tired after a long time. Your recovery will become slower and slower, and your learning efficiency will also drop. Modifying the environment was the right choice. As the saying goes, the wool comes from the sheep's back. You modified the special training camp for the sake of improving the learning efficiency of the students. The fees must have increased, right?" Lu Zi looked at Wasp with a smile and asked, "I'm more curious about how much we have to pay to get the best service." Wasp laughed and replied, "Not much, not much. 1,000,000 spiritual value points per person." Chapter 641. 1,000,000. Hearing Wasp's answer, even the wealthy Lu Zi could not help but frown. Isn't this price a bit too expensive? Qin Chuan also felt that this price was too expensive. 1,000,000 spiritual value points was not something that anyone could easily take out. Wasp chuckled. He did not seem to be surprised that Qin Chuan and Lu Zi would have such doubts. He calmly said to the two of them, "Why don't the two of you take a look at the services that our Sky Sea Special Training Camp provides when you pay the tuition fees? Trust me, our services will definitely make you feel that it is worth it." Hearing Wasp's words, Qin Chuan's face could not help but reveal a hint of curiosity. He wanted to see what kind of services the Sky Sea Special Training Camp would provide for them. Under Wasp's lead, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi arrived at the place where the tuition fees were paid. At this time, the place was still very deserted. Other than the staff, there were no other students. Seeing Wasp bring the two of them in, a staff member immediately handed over 2 sets of information. Wasp took the information and turned around to pass it to Qin Chuan and Lu Zi. He smiled and said, "Please take a look. This is the list of services that our Sky Sea Special Training Camp will provide for the two of you for the next month." Qin Chuan opened the list and looked at it. When he saw the first service, he was stunned. Unlimited supply of special nutrition potions. Qin Chuan looked at Wasp and asked, "Eat as much as you want." Wasp smiled and nodded. He said to Qin Chuan, "Under the principle of not wasting, students are allowed to use special nutrition potions as much as they want. As long as your body can absorb it, you can even eat 100 of them a day." Hearing Wasp's answer, Qin Chuan's face could not help but reveal a subtle expression. A special nutrition potion should be around 10,000 spiritual value points on the market. A normal foundation establishment stage cultivator could digest the energy provided by a special nutrition potion in 2 to 3 days. In other words, a student could consume at least 10 special nutrition potions in a month. The price was already around 100,000 spiritual value points. Furthermore, this was only the most basic service. Looking at the second service, unlimited supply of special healing potions and healing potions. Injuries were unavoidable during daily learning and training. Receiving the best treatment as soon as possible could not only ensure that the body would not suffer any sequelae due to injuries, it would also not delay training and learning. Therefore, special healing potions and healing potions were necessary items. The cost for a month would be around 100,000 spiritual value points. The third service, the best instructors and the most efficient training methods. Putting aside the instructors, if the Sky Sea Special Training Camp could really provide them with the most efficient training methods to become an EXO, then Qin Xuan felt that the 1 million spiritual value points spent would be worth it. This was because the training methods were priceless. It was extremely precious to every cultivator who desired to become an EXO. Furthermore, with the reputation of the Sky Sea Special Training Camp in the entire Star Dragon Federation, they should not lie about this kind of thing. While Qin Xuan was still looking at the first service, Lu Zi had already flipped through the information. She looked at Wasp with a subtle expression and asked, "What does the adult service at the end mean?" Wasp smiled faintly and explained to Lu Zi, "In the boring and tedious training life, it is inevitable that there will be times when one is in a bad mood and needs to vent. Our special training camp will provide excellent adult services for such students. The target of our services is not only cultivators, but also the appearance and figure of our service. Our massage techniques are also superb. However, I believe that this kind of service is not necessary for the two of you." Hearing Wasp's explanation, Qin Xuan's expression suddenly became strange. He did not expect the Sky Sea Special Training Camp to provide such a special service. Lu Zi glared fiercely at Qin Xuan and said to Qin Xuan, "If you dare to ask for this kind of service, I will throw you out to feed the sandworms." Qin Xuan did not know whether to laugh or cry. He did not say anything. Okay? Did she have to be so ruthless? However, other than this special service, the other services provided by the Sky Sea Special Training Camp were all proper services. They were all aimed at the daily life and training of the students. The value of these services could be calculated to be around 500,000 spiritual value points. In addition to the most efficient training methods and special services, the tuition fee of 1 million spiritual value points was acceptable. "How are the two of you?" Wasp chuckled and asked, "Do you want to pay?" "Pay." Qin Xuan took out his spiritual value card and handed it to Wasp. "Use the card. There are 300,000 spiritual value points in it." Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Wasp was stunned and asked subconsciously, "What about the remaining 700,000 spiritual value points?" Qin Xuan pouted at LVZ, who was standing at the side, and said, "She will." Wasp subconsciously looked at Lu Zi. Lu Zi took out her spiritual value card and handed it to Wasp. She said to Wasp, "Each of us will pay 900,000 spiritual value points. I don't care about adult services. Also, please swipe his card clean. Don't leave a single cent behind." Wasp looked at Qin Xuan ambiguously and said, "It seems like your girlfriend is worried about you." Facing Wasp's merciless mockery, Qin Xuan did not know what to say. He could only smile bitterly and said, "After paying, bring us around." Qin Xuan. At this moment, a gentle voice sounded from behind everyone. A tall figure walked in from outside. "I was worried that you guys would be delayed by the sandstorm. I didn't expect you guys to be here already." Diwu Qingyan suddenly appeared and walked to Qin Xuan's side. She smiled at Qin Xuan and said, "It's great to see that you guys are fine." Looking at the smiling Diwu Qingyan, before Qin Xuan could say anything, Lu Zi had already inserted herself between the two of them. She smiled at Diwu Qingyan and said, "Thank you for your concern, Miss Diwu. Qin Xuan and I are fine." Diwu Qingyan nodded and said to the two of them, "You guys should have just arrived here not long ago, right? You must not have walked around the special training camp yet. Why don't you let me be your tour guide and show you the scenery of the special training camp?" "There's no need for that." Lu Zi declined. "We have already paid, and we have our own housekeeper." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Diwu Qingyan said, "Then why don't we go together? Coincidentally, I haven't paid the housekeeper fee yet." Lu Zi. Qin Xuan felt a headache coming on when he heard Diwu Qingyan's words. He really did not expect that Diwu Qingyan would still pester them when Lu Zi had already rejected her so obviously. This person either really did not understand the ways of the world, where she was deliberately pestering them so that she could have a good relationship with them. No matter what Diwu Qingyin's motive was, he did not like it. Chapter 642. Qinchuan was just about to reject Diwu Qingyin's pestering when Lu Zi suddenly agreed. She said to Diwu Qingyin, "If that's the case, then let's go together." Seeing that Lu Zi had agreed, Diwu Qingyin immediately said happily to Lu Zi, "That's great." Looking at Diwu Qingyin's innocent and cute appearance, Qinchuan couldn't help but frown slightly. To be honest, he didn't think that a foundation-building cultivator would be as innocent as a little white rabbit. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that Diwu Qingyin was pretending. As if she could see through Qinchuan's thoughts, Lu Zi whispered to Qinchuan, "I feel that this woman is a little abnormal, so I specially invited her to walk around with us and observe her. If she really has a problem, as long as we interact with her for a long time, we will definitely be able to find some clues." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qinchuan looked at Diwu Qingyin with a subtle gaze. Then he said to Lu Zi, "You are right. Since she insists on pestering us, then we should observe her properly. To be honest, I also feel that there is something wrong with her." "What are you guys talking about?" Diwu Qingyin smiled as she walked in front of Qinchuan and Lu Zi. She handed over 2 red brocade pouches and said to the 2 of them, "This is a small token of my appreciation. I hope you can accept it." Looking at the brocade pouches that Diwu Qingyin handed over, Qinchuan asked curiously, "What is this?" Diwu Qingyin smiled and explained, "This is our Diwu clan's specially made heart cleansing pouch. It has the effect of calming the heart and concentrating the spirit. It is good for sleep and also good for mental recovery." Heart cleansing pouch. Huang Feng, who was standing at the side, couldn't help but look at Diwu Qingyin with an extremely shocked gaze. He cried out involuntarily, "Could this young lady be the successor of the hidden Diwu clan?" Hearing Huang Feng's words, Qinchuan and Lu Zi were a little confused. Hidden clan? Diwu clan? What was that? Under the confused gazes of Qinchuan and Lu Zi, Diwu Qingyin smiled and nodded lightly. "I am indeed the successor of the Diwu family. Please do not spread this news. I do not wish for others to know about this." Wasp immediately nodded and said, "Don't worry. I will keep this a secret." At this point, Wasp turned to look at Qinchuan and Lu Zi. She sighed and said, "At first, when I saw Miss Diwu's naivety, I thought she was just being pretentious. But now that I know her identity, I don't find it strange anymore." Hearing Wasp's words, Qinchuan and Lu Zi were confused. Why would she say that? Seeing Qinchuan and Lu Zi's confusion, Wasp smiled and explained, "The Diwu clan is a hidden clan. All of their disciples are not allowed to leave the clan before they reach adulthood. Without coming into contact with a complicated society outside, most of their temperament is extremely pure and kind. In my opinion, Misty Wu should have just reached adulthood and left the clan not long ago. That's why she is still acting so naive and unaffected by the ways of the world." Hearing Wasp's explanation, Qinchuan couldn't help but be dumbfounded. There is actually such a saying? Lu Zi was a little skeptical. If that's the case, doesn't that mean the Diwu clan is filled with naive and kind people? That's indeed the case. Wasp sighed and said to Lu Zi, "As far as I know, every member of the Diwu clan who has just left the clan and came to the outside world is indeed a naive and kind person. However, because of this, most of the Diwu clan's members have been killed." "Killed?" Lu Zi frowned. "Why did that happen?" "Probably because they met the wrong person." Qinchuan pursed his lips and looked at Diwu Qingyin with a subtle gaze. Then he said to Lu Zi, "If a naive and kind person meets a bad person, there's a high chance that they will be cheated miserably." That's indeed the case. Wasp nodded in agreement. Although there are many good people in this world, there are also many bad people. At this point, Wasp looked at Diwu Qingyin with a subtle gaze and said in a low voice, "Especially a girl as beautiful as young Mistress Diwu. You have to be extra careful to protect yourself." Diwu Qingyin smiled slightly and said to Wasp, "I have always been very careful to protect myself." "Wrong. Wasp shook its head again. Young Mistress Diwu took out the heart-cleansing pouch, so openly. This is equivalent to revealing your identity to others. Under my questioning, young Mistress Diwu revealed her identity without any hesitation. This is too wrong. If the few of us had the intention to harm you, I'm afraid it would be very difficult for you to leave here alive today. Diwu Qingyan shook her head and said to Wasp, Lu Chuan and Qin Zi are both good people. They won't harm me. Lu Chuan? Qin Zi? Wasp looked at Qin Chuan and Lu Zi strangely. These two people were actually using fake names to date Diwu Qingyan. Facing Wasp's gaze, Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Wasp, Previously, we met young Mistress Diwu in the desert once. At that time, we didn't know young Mistress Diwu's background, so we used fake names. Fake names? Diwu Qingyan was a little surprised. You're not called Lu Chuan? Qin Chuan nodded and replied, Accurately speaking, I should be called Qin Chuan. My name is Lu Zi. Lu Zi looked at Diwu Qingyan and said, The two of us just swapped our surnames. So that's how it is. Diwu Qingyan smiled slightly. Since the misunderstanding has been resolved, then it's fine. Seeing that Diwu Qingyan did not show any signs of anger or dissatisfaction, and was instead smiling very gently, Qin Chuan could not help but feel a little emotional. Perhaps they had misunderstood Diwu Qingyan before. Let's go. We'll let Steward Huang bring us around. Now that the misunderstanding had been resolved, Lu Zi also let down her guard against Diwu Qingyan and took the initiative to greet her. Wasp, who was at the side, chuckled and said to everyone, Then please follow me. Walking on the streets of the Sky Sea Special Training Camp, Qin Chuan admired the scenery around him, but his mind was still thinking about Diwu Qingyan. Lu Zi slowly approached Qin Chuan and asked Qin Chuan, Are you still suspecting Diwu Qingyan? Qin Chuan shook his head lightly and said to Lu Zi, I'm not suspecting Diwu Qingyan. I'm just curious about what kind of existence the hidden clans are. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lu Zi smiled and explained to Qin Chuan, I thought you were thinking about something else. So it's about the hidden clans. Although I don't know how many hidden clans there are in this world, I know how to look up information. As she spoke, Lu Zi presented her optical computer in front of Qin Chuan and said to Qin Chuan, Take a look. This is the information I just found. It's about the hidden clans. Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan subconsciously looked at Lu Zi's optical computer and began to look up information about the hidden clans. Chapter 643. After reading the information about the reclusive clans, Qin Chuan couldn't help but reveal an expression of sudden realization. He said to LVZ, So the reclusive clans are those clans that had no choice but to conceal their identities and recuperate silently because of the heavy losses they suffered during the Great Chaos. Lu Zi nodded and said to Qin Chuan, I didn't expect the hidden clans to come about like this. It's really hard to believe. After reading the information, Qin Chuan frowned and said, There's no information about the hidden clans. It has been more than 10,000 years since the Great Chaotic Era. It's normal for some clans to gradually disappear in the process of hiding from a world. Lu Zi smiled and said to Qin Chuan, Moreover, there were so many clans hiding their names back then. Who knows how many hidden clans are still alive in this world after 10,000 years? Qin Chuan nodded lightly when he heard this, indicating that he agreed with Lu Zi's words. However, he still had some doubts in his heart. He felt that things were not as simple as they seemed. However, after thinking about it carefully, he could not find any problems. Maybe I'm being too paranoid. With that thought, Qin Chuan could not help but look at Diwu Qingyan, who was curiously asking Wasp about the Tianhai Special Training Camp. As if sensing Qin Chuan's gaze, Diwu Qingyan turned her head and looked at Qin Chuan curiously, asking, Why are you looking at me? Qin Chuan chuckled when he heard this and said to Diwu Qingyan, Nothing, I just think that you look good. Hearing Qin Chuan's praise, Diwu Qingyan smiled shyly and then turned her head away, as if she was too embarrassed to face Qin Chuan again. Lu Zi heard the conversation between Qin Chuan and Diwu Qingyan and could not help but say to Qin Chuan angrily, There really are no good men. They're all lecherous guys. I'm just stating a fact. Qin Chuan looked at Diwu Qingyin's back and said to Lu Zi, "She is indeed very pretty." Slap. Lu Zi viciously stomped on Qin Chuan's foot and walked away in a huff. Qin Chuan grimaced in pain as he watched Lu Zi's departing figure. He helplessly said in a low voice, "She's too irritable." "Misty Wu, I finally found you." Just as Qin Chuan and the others were strolling around, a figure suddenly dashed towards them and stood in front of Diwu Qingyin with a look of surprise. This person was none other than Jiang Feng, the one who had some conflict and communication with Qin Chuan in the desert. Seeing Jiang Feng suddenly appear, Diwu Qingyin was quite surprised. She did not expect to see Jiang Feng here again. Seeing that Diwu Qingyin was silent, Jiang Feng smiled and said, "Young Mistress Diwu, are you surprised to see me? Speaking of which, I have to thank Lu Chuan and Qin Zi for being able to come here." Hearing Jiang Feng's words, Qin Chuan coughed softly and said, "Jiang Feng, you remembered wrongly. My name is Qin Chuan, and she is Lu Zi." Jiang Feng could not help but show a hint of doubt when he heard this. He asked, "Did I remember wrongly?" "You must have remembered wrongly," Lu Zi vowed. "My name is Lu Zi, and he is Qin Chuan. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is what you said to me before." Jiang Feng said to Diwu Qingyin excitedly, "Did you know? Ever since you left without saying goodbye that morning, I've been looking for you everywhere, but I couldn't find you. It was Qin Chuan who reminded me. He told me that you would definitely go to the Tianhai Special Training Camp. As long as I went there, I would definitely be able to see you again." After receiving Qin Chuan's reminder, I went all the way to the special training camp. Finally, I arrived at the special training camp just now. I didn't expect to see you as soon as I came in. Heaven truly does not disappoint those who persevere. Hearing Jiang Feng's explanation, everyone present was stunned. No one would have thought that what supported Jiang Feng to overcome so many obstacles to come here was actually the desire to see Diwu Qingyin again. Could this be the legendary power of love? This is unbelievable. Qin Chuan couldn't help but sigh. You really didn't have it easy. From Qin Chuan's point of view, Jiang Feng really didn't have it easy. With Jiang Feng's strength, it was already fortunate that he didn't die in the desert. Yet, he was still able to persevere and make it to the Tianhai Special Training Camp. This was something that Qin Chuan never expected. Indeed, it's not too. Jiang Feng looked at Qin Chuan and suddenly said with some doubt, "Qin Chuan, why do I feel that you look somewhat familiar?" Qin Chuan was stunned when he heard this. He asked in confusion, "This is the third time we've met. Shouldn't I look familiar?" No. Jiang Feng shook his head. "I think I've seen you on TV before." Huang Feng chuckled and said to Jiang Feng, "Actually, I already recognized Qin Chuan the moment I saw him. He's a student of the Black Moon Combat Academy, and he's also the champion of this year's 6 Great Academies ranking tournament." When he heard Huang Feng's words, Jiang Feng's face immediately showed a look of realization. He quickly said, Yes, that's it. The MVP of the finals, Qin Chuan." Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Jiang Feng, "So you're talking about this? I thought we've met somewhere before." "Qin Chuan, you're a legend in our school." Jiang Feng looked at Qin Chuan with excitement and said loudly, "You don't know how big of an impact you had on us when you led the Black Moon Combat Academy's team to win the championship. It was really sensational." Seeing Jiang Feng so excited, Diwu Qingyin asked curiously, "Is Qin Chuan very strong?" Jiang Feng nodded and said excitedly, "Of course he's strong. But I'm not bad either." After saying this, Jiang Feng's expression couldn't help but become a little awkward. In fact, he knew very well that he was far from being able to compare to Qin Chuan. However, in front of his goddess, he really didn't want to lose face. Seeing the change in Jiang Feng's expression, Qin Chuan smiled and said lightly, "Jiang Feng is right. He's about as strong as I am." At that time, Jiang Feng didn't participate in the competition. Otherwise, it's hard to say who would win. When he heard Qin Chuan's words, Jiang Feng's face immediately showed a touch of gratitude. He didn't expect that not only did Qin Chuan not expose his lie, he even helped him cover it up. What great assist! Lucy rolled her eyes at this. Perhaps this was the tacit understanding between boys. Then the two of you are very strong. Diwu Qingyan smiled and said to Jiang Feng, in the future, you have to work hard in your cultivation in the special training camp. This time, you finally have a chance to compete with Qin Chuan. You have to win. When he heard Diwu Qingyan's words, Jiang Feng's expression suddenly became awkward. You want me to compete with Qin Chuan? What should I do? Chapter 644. Just like that, the original group of 4 became a group of 5 because of Jiang Feng's sudden intrusion. Qin Chuan walked at the back and looked at Jiang Feng, who had been fawning over Diwu Qingyan to the point that even Wasp could not get a word in edgewise. For some reason, he could not help but want to laugh. What are you laughing at? Lucy walked to Qin Chuan's side and looked at the smile on Qin Chuan's face. She asked with some confusion, why is there such a smile on your face? Qin Chuan coughed softly and said to Lucy, I think Jiang Feng and Diwu Qingyan are a good match. What do you think? Lucy looked at Jiang Feng and Diwu Qingyan walking together in shock. She asked Qin Chuan, is there something wrong with your eyesight? How can you tell that they're a good match? Qin Chuan chuckled and replied, 2 people who don't know their own limits. Are they not a good match? You are insulting them in disguise. Lucy rolled her eyes at Qin Chuan. I think Diwu Qingyan is a good girl. She can't be deceived by a playboy like Jiang Feng. You even helped Jiang Feng cover up his lie just now. That is a heinous crime. Yes. I'm a heinous crime. Qin Chuan smiled. When the time comes, if I really want to spar with Jiang Feng, I will purposely lose to Jiang Feng so that Jiang Feng can show off in front of Diwu Qingyan. Lucy looked at Qin Chuan in confusion and asked, what are you planning to do? Qin Chuan smiled mischievously and said, nothing. I'm just playing around. Dong. Suddenly, an extremely loud bell rang in the special training camp for a long time. Hearing the sound of the bell, Wasp immediately smiled and said to everyone, the sound of the bell means that the number of students in this special training camp has reached 30. There will be no more new students. Please follow me to the training camp's freshman hall. All the new students will gather there after hearing the bell. Qin Chuan nodded lightly and said to Wasp, then let's go over. I also want to get to know who the students are this time. With Wasp leading the way, Qin Chuan and the others headed towards the freshman hall. On their way there, they bumped into a group of youngsters who were also being led by the housekeeper. They didn't need to guess to know that these youngsters were the new recruits of the special training camp. After arriving at the entrance of the freshman hall, Wasp stopped and turned around to face Qin Chuan and the others. Everyone, only freshmen can enter the freshman hall. I can only bring you up to here. Thank you for your hard work, Butler Huang. Diwu Qingyan smiled faintly and said to Yellow Bee, you should go and rest as well. We can handle the rest on our own. Hearing Diwu Qingyan's words, Wasp smiled and bowed slightly to everyone before turning around and leaving. Miss Diwu is so gentle and considerate. Jiang Feng looked at Diwu Qingyan with infatuation. Probably only a kind person like Miss Diwu would care about a housekeeper's hard work. Hearing Jiang Feng's words, Qin Chuan smiled and walked towards the freshman hall. Lucy followed closely behind. Diwu Qingyan wanted to follow as well, but Jiang Feng beat her to it. Then he said to Diwu Qingyan in a very gentlemanly manner, Miss Diwu, let me lead the way for you. Facing Jiang Feng's enthusiasm, Diwu Qingyan forced a smile and said, thank you very much. The freshman hall was not big. In fact, it was a little small. It was only about 200 square meters. The decoration was very simple, and the furnishings were also very simple. Other than 30 chairs, there was nothing else. At this time, there were already more than a dozen figures sitting on the chairs. When they saw Qin Chuan and the others walk in, they subconsciously looked at them. However, their gazes quickly shifted to Diwu Qingyan. It could not be helped. Diwu Qingyan was too beautiful. It was difficult for normal people to ignore her. Facing those slightly passionate gazes, Diwu Qingyan seemed to be a little uncomfortable. She could not help but show a hint of shyness on her face. This made those people look at Diwu Qingyan even more brightly. "What are you looking at? What are you looking at?" Jiang Feng, who was walking beside Diwu Qingyan, could not help but shout when he saw this. "Have you never seen a woman before?" Hearing Jiang Feng's words, someone finally noticed Jiang Feng's existence. He smiled and teased, "I've seen many women, but this is the first time I've seen one as beautiful as this one. Brother, you're not worthy of her. Why don't you give her to us?" Hearing this person's words, the others laughed out loud. Those who were able to cross the western desert to come here were all favored by the heavens. They all had their own confidence and pride. Not only did they want to be the strongest man, but they also wanted to marry the most beautiful woman. Obviously, Diwu Qingyan was the kind of near-perfect partner that they had always been pursuing in their hearts. If there was a chance, they naturally wanted to get close to her. Seeing these people's vulgar words, Jiang Feng was immediately furious. He shouted at the crowd, "Don't go too far. Jiang Feng, don't say anymore." Diwu Qingyan shook her head gently. "Don't argue with them. Let them say whatever they want." Jiang Feng was both touched and anxious when he heard this. He did not expect that Diwu Qingyan would still think for him when these people had already spoken so rudely. The more she acted like this, the more he wanted to stand up for Diwu Qingyan and shut everyone up. "Qin Chuan, they are bullying Miss Diwu like this. As a friend, aren't you going to do something about it?" Jiang Feng looked at Qin Chuan. "You are the publicly acknowledged #1 prodigy of the younger generation. If they don't listen to you, then beat them into submission." Qin Chuan, who was watching the show, could not help but roll his eyes when he heard Jiang Feng's words. Which eye of this guy saw that Diwu Qingyan was being bullied? A fair lady was a gentleman's dream. He was only expressing his admiration for Diwu Qingyan. He did not go overboard with serving her in bed. You are the one who has gone crazy from wanting to have her all to yourself. Just as Qin Chuan was ridiculing Jiang Feng in his heart, the others had already shifted their gazes from Diwu Qingyan to Qin Chuan. Their gazes were extremely subtle. "You are that Qin Chuan from the Black Moon Combat Academy?" Someone looked at Qin Chuan from head to toe and said in a playful tone, "I didn't recognize you at first. Now that I take a closer look, it really is you." Hearing this person's words, someone raised his eyebrows slightly and laughed. The #1 prodigy of the younger generation. TSK, TSK, TSK. How impressive. I wonder if your true abilities are as good as your ability to boast. Ha ha ha. Before this person could finish speaking, the crowd burst into laughter. At this moment, Diwu Qingyan suddenly walked in front of Qin Chuan. With her back facing Qin Chuan, she faced the crowd and said, "If you have the ability, come at me. Don't hurt Qin Chuan." Chapter 645. Diwu Qingyan's actions and words successfully silenced the noisy freshman hall. Everyone looked at Diwu Qingyan, who was shielding Qin Chuan behind her, and a subtle look flashed across their eyes. From Diwu Qingyan's performance, she seemed to be interested in Qin Chuan. If they could snatch this woman from Qin Chuan's hands, that would be interesting. Qin Chuan looked at Diwu Qingyan, who was shielding him, speechlessly. To be honest, he did not feel any warmth or gratitude for being protected by someone. Instead, he felt like laughing. In his opinion, Diwu Qingyan was not protecting him, but creating hatred for him. "Young Mistress Diwu, thank you for your kindness, but I can handle these things myself." Qin Chuan sighed helplessly. Although he did not like Diwu Qingyan's actions, no matter what, Diwu Qingyan had good intentions. He still had to thank Diwu Qingyan. Diwu Qingyan looked back at Qin Chuan when she heard this. Her bright eyes had become moist, as if tears were about to fall. She blamed herself and said to Qin Chuan, "I'm sorry. It's all because of me that you got into an argument with these people. It's all my fault." Seeing Diwu Qingyan's pitiful look, Lu Zi, who was standing at the side, felt a little heartache. She could not help but say to everyone, "Are you all shameless? Making things difficult for a girl like this? Are you still men?" Hearing Lu Zi's words, Everyone's face showed a look of disapproval. In the cultivation world, strength was the most important thing. Whether it was a man or a woman, they should use their strength to gain the respect of others, not their gender. All right, little Z. Qinchuan reached out and pulled Lu Zi to his side. Then he faced everyone and said, I think there's still some time before the people from the special training camp arrive. Why don't we spar? Any of you can fight. When everyone heard Qinchuan's words, their expressions became extremely surprised. No one thought that Qinchuan would actually suggest a spar. Was he trying to use force to subdue them? Actually, I've already quiet. At this moment, a rather dignified voice suddenly sounded in everyone's ears. A tall and straight figure slowly walked in from outside. He looked around at everyone and said in a deep voice, If you want to spar, you can wait until later. This is the freshman hall, the place where the freshman assembly is held. It's not a place for you to behave atrociously. While they were talking, the person had already walked to the podium of the freshman hall. Everyone's eyes also shifted to the podium. He looked at everyone and said, My name is Wang Wei, and I am your instructor. I will accompany you through the next month of special training. Hearing Wang Wei's words, someone in the crowd asked in surprise, You're Wang Wei? Wang Wei, the strongest exo in the core formation stage? Hearing his words, everyone couldn't help but be shocked. The strongest exo in the gold core stage. Wang Wei looked at the person who spoke indifferently and said, Before I give you permission to speak, please maintain absolute silence. Hearing Wang Wei's reminder, the person immediately shut his mouth and behaved extremely obediently. Obviously, he was intimidated by Wang Wei's name. Seeing this person's performance, Qinchuan couldn't help but feel a little curious about Wang Wei. He really wanted to know how strong the strongest exo in the core formation stage was. Lu Zi, who was standing beside Qinchuan, whispered to Qinchuan, Wang Wei himself is only in the late stage of the core formation stage. His strength is not strong, but if Wang Wei is allowed to drive a battlesuit, even some of the famous perfected core formation stage experts are no match for Wang Wei. It can be said that he is invincible in the core formation stage. It is also because of this that Wang Wei earned the title of the strongest exo in the core formation stage. I also didn't expect that we would be so lucky to become Wang Wei's students this time. This is a good thing for people like us who really want to learn technology. Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qinchuan nodded slightly. If Wang Wei really lived up to his name, then he was indeed the best instructor for them. I don't care what your identity is outside, or what status you have, but in here, you are just students. Students who have nothing special or special. What you need to do is to obey the instructor's orders and learn how to drive a battlesuit seriously. Other than that, I don't want you to waste your strength on other things. Wang Wei looked at the crowd with deep eyes and said loudly, Now, those who are not willing to follow the arrangement can leave. After Wang Wei's voice faded away, none of the 30 people present made any move. They came here to learn how to drive a battlesuit and become an exo. Now that they were lucky enough to become the strongest exo in the entire Federation, only fools would leave. After a full minute of silence, Wang Wei asked indifferently, Are you sure no one wants to leave? Seeing that no one spoke, Wang Wei nodded slightly and said, In that case, our special training will begin now. Everyone, go to the field immediately. Those who are not there in 10 minutes will be punished by cleaning the toilets. Hearing Wang Wei's words, some people couldn't help but reveal a trace of surprise on their faces. The special training actually began now. However, even more people started to move without saying a word. They quickly ran out of the freshman hall and rushed towards the sports field. On the way to the field, Qinchuan smiled and said to Lu Zi beside him, I'm suddenly looking forward to the next month of special training. Lu Zi smiled and replied, I hope you can maintain your current state until the end of the special training. Let me remind you, Wang Wei is famous for his strictness. While the two were talking, they had already arrived at the field of the special training camp. At this time, there were only 3 people present besides instructor Wang Wei. They were ranked 4th and 5th. Qin Chuan looked at the expressionless Wang Wei. He suddenly raised his hand and said, "Reporting to instructor, I have a question to ask." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, everyone looked at Qin Chuan with some surprise. Some were curious about what Qin Chuan was going to ask. Wang Wei looked at Qin Chuan calmly and asked, "What question do you have?" Qin Chuan smiled and asked, "I want to ask the instructor for special training after the end of every day's formal training. I don't know if that's possible." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, everyone present was stunned, including Wang Wei. None of them thought that Qin Chuan was already thinking about special training before the formal training even began. Wang Wei looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said to Qin Chuan, "If you still have energy after the end of every day's formal training, then I can give you special training." Hearing Wang Wei's answer, Qin Chuan grinned. "Thank you, instructor." Wang Wei looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "It won't be too late to thank me after the special training." Chapter 646. At this time, the 30 students had arrived at the field one after another. No one exceeded the time limit. Wang Wei saw that everyone had arrived and said loudly, "All students, listen up. Start running laps around the field. Everyone is allowed to run 100,000 meters. You're not allowed to use spiritual power. You can only rely on your physical strength. Those who use spiritual power without permission will be directly dissuaded. Also, those who can't finish within an hour will have an additional training load of 10,000 meters for every minute that exceeds the time limit. There is no limit." Everyone couldn't help but exclaim when they heard Wang Wei's words. Running 100,000 meters in an hour with physical strength was too difficult. "What are you arguing about?" Wang Wei's face was cold. "Those who are unwilling to obey the order can apply to leave the special training camp now." In the face of Wang Wei's warning, everyone obediently shut their mouths. They didn't want to be directly expelled because of some complaints. It was only 100,000 meters. Maybe they could finish it. It's not difficult for a normal foundation establishment cultivator to run 100,000 meters in an hour if they can use spiritual power. However, it's a bit difficult to rely only on physical strength. Lu Zi's face was slightly dignified. "My physical strength has always been my shortcoming." Before Lu Zi finished speaking, Qin Chuan had already taken out a rope and tied it around his and Lu Zi's waist. He said to Lu Zi, "Just follow me later. I'll finish the run with you." Lu Zi was touched, but she shook her head and said, "This won't do. I'll drag you down. The instructor won't allow you to do this." "It's okay, Qin Chuan." At this time, Wang Wei suddenly called out Qin Chuan's name. He looked at Qin Chuan and said indifferently, "You have to run 150,000 meters in an hour." Hearing Wang Wei's words, the faces of the people who came later were filled with shock. They did not understand why Wang Wei wanted to increase Qin Chuan's training load, and by so much at that. On the other hand, the people who came earlier had playful expressions on their faces. They were not surprised that Qin Chuan's training load would be increased. After all, he was the one who asked for special treatment. Of course, he would be given special treatment. When the news of Qin Chuan's request for special treatment spread among the crowd, everyone looked at Qin Chuan strangely. They really didn't know whether Qin Chuan was confident or arrogant. He asked for special treatment before the official training started. This was completely disregarding the official training that Wang Wei arranged for them. In the face of such provocation, it would be strange if Wang Wei didn't give special treatment to Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan didn't care about Wang Wei's special treatment. With his physical strength, running 150,000 meters in an hour wasn't a problem at all. However, this way, he wouldn't be able to take care of Lu Zi. "You can do it yourself. Trust me, I can do it myself." Lu Zi said to Qin Chuan, "I want to walk side by side with you. I don't want to follow behind you and be dragged by you forever." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan nodded gently and said to Lu Zi, "Then you have to work hard. You must hold on. Don't give up so easily." Beep, beep, beep. At this moment, Wang Wei whistled and started the timer. Everyone immediately started running. Qin Chuan blended in with the crowd, neither in front nor behind. He kept moving forward at a constant speed. At the very beginning, everyone ran extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they had covered a kilometer. However, when they ran more than 10,000 meters, some people started to show signs of uneven breathing. Their speed gradually slowed down, and the first echelon gradually pulled away. When they ran about 30,000 meters, more and more people fell behind. At this time, there were only 6 people left in the first echelon. Among these 6 people, other than Qin Chuan and Lu Zi, there was also Diwu Qingyan and the surprising Jiang Feng. As for the remaining 2 people, Qin Chuan didn't know them. He only knew that one of them was called Hua Qinyu, and the other was called Shun Tao. Previously, they were relatively quiet in the freshman hall and kept a low profile. When they ran about 54 meters, Jiang Feng had already fallen behind. Lu Zi and Diwu Qingyan were also almost unable to hold on. However, Hua Qinyu and Shun Tao still maintained their exuberant energy. Moreover, the more they ran, the braver they became. Qin Chuan glanced at Lu Zi beside him and whispered, "Don't go too fast. It's most important to maintain your condition and finish the race. Take care of yourself. I'm going to speed up." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lu Zi nodded and said while panting slightly, "Do your best." Whoosh! Qin Chuan's figure shot out like a sharp arrow. Almost in the blink of an eye, he overtook Hua Qinyu and Shun Tao and rushed forward quickly. Seeing this scene, Hua Qinyu and Shun Tao subconsciously increased their speed, wanting to catch up to Qin Chuan. However, Qin Chuan's speed was too fast, and they could only watch from afar. Qin Chuan's sudden acceleration attracted everyone's attention. Just when everyone thought that Qin Chuan was just trying to attract attention, Qin Chuan had already run more than 10,000 meters in extremely fast speed. Moreover, he had no intention of slowing down at all. 70,000 meters, 80,000 meters, 100,000 meters, 110,000 meters. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Qin Chuan ran 110,000 meters at an extremely fast speed. In addition to the 40,000 meters from before, he had successfully completed the 150,000 meters training that Wang Wei had set for him. At this time, only 52 minutes had passed. After completing the training, Qin Chuan began to slow down and slowly stopped in front of Wang Wei. Panting slightly, he said to Wang Wei, "Reporting to instructor, I've completed the training." Wang Wei looked at Qin Chuan expressionlessly and said indifferently, "Good performance. You can go to the side and rest for a while. When the others finish their training, you can continue with additional training." Qin Chuan smiled and said to Wang Wei, "I'm not a person who likes to wait. I choose additional training." After saying this, Qin Chuan ran out and prepared to accompany Lu Zi for the rest of the race. Wang Wei looked at Qin Chuan's back as he left, and a hint of admiration flashed through his eyes. Confident and capable. Not bad, young man. An hour later, everyone had completed the training within the allotted time. Some people still had energy left, while others were so tired that they were lying on the ground. They didn't even want to move a finger. Everyone here was a cultivator. Usually, they would rely on their spiritual energy to fight or travel. They rarely relied on their physical strength. Now that they had run 100,000 meters without using their spiritual energy, they finally realized the difference between them and the others, especially Qin Chuan. Not only had he exceeded the training quota of 150,000 meters, but he had also done it without blushing. He was simply inhuman. Chapter 6:47. Wang Wei looked at the people who were lying on the ground without a care for their image. He snorted and said, "It's only 100,000 meters, and you can't hold on anymore? Is that all you can do? Stand up, all of you." Hearing Wang Wei's roar, everyone reluctantly got up from the ground. Each and every one of them looked crooked and weak, causing Wang Wei to almost laugh out in anger. Do you know what is the most important thing to be an excellent exo? Not spiritual energy, not level, and not the quality of the exo, but physical strength. Wang Wei shouted at the crowd. If you can't have a strong body, you will still be a piece of garbage even if you have the best exo in the world. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Sparse responses came from the crowd. Although they knew that Wang Wei was telling the truth, they were really tired. Seeing the crowd's reaction, Wang Wei said coldly, "Now, I will give you 10 minutes to adjust. After 10 minutes, you will continue to run laps. This time, it will still be 100,000 meters, and the time limit will still be 1 hour." Hearing Wang Wei's words, the crowd couldn't help but sigh. They still had to run laps? This was simply asking for his life. Wang Wei ignored them. He turned to Qin Chuan and said seriously, "Qin Chuan, this time, the training volume you have to complete is 180,000 meters. Are you confident?" Hearing this, Qin Chuan immediately replied loudly, "Yes, sir." "Good." Wang Wei nodded and said to the crowd, "Do you see? This is what a young man should be like. He is full of vigor and vitality, unlike you who are about to die. Just looking at you makes me angry." Hearing Wang Wei's words, the crowd couldn't help but look at Qin Chuan with resentment. They could accept that Qin Chuan was better than them, but they couldn't stand that someone was using Qin Chuan's excellence to belittle them. They had to finish the training no matter what. Even if they were exhausted and turned into ghosts, they had to finish it. When night fell, there was no one standing on the field. Even Qin Chuan was lying on the ground. None of them expected that on the first day of the special training camp, they would actually spend their time running laps. 800,000 meters. Everyone ran a full 800,000 meters. As the person who was specially taken care of by Wang Wei, Qin Chuan finished 1,400,000 meters. His training volume was almost twice as much as the others. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been lying on the ground with the others. Looking at the exhausted crowd, Wang Wei's dignified face showed a smile and asked, "Are you tired?" As Wang Wei's voice fell, no one responded to him. Everyone was so tired that they didn't want to speak at all. Even Qin Chuan was exhausted. Looking at the crowd, Wang Wei said faintly, "Since you are all so tired, then it's time to rest. Gather on the field at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. No one is allowed to be late. Dismissed now." After saying this, Wang Wei was about to turn and leave. At this moment, Qin Chuan struggled to get up from the ground and shouted in a hoarse voice, "Instructor, please wait." Hearing Qin Chuan shout, Wang Wei slowly turned and looked at Qin Chuan. His gaze was subtle as he asked, "You still want to give special treatment?" Qin Chuan nodded and replied, "It's 7 o'clock in the evening now. Please give me an hour. I will definitely be able to recover by 8 o'clock." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Wang Wei looked deeply at Qin Chuan and asked, "If you don't recover by 8 o'clock and come to me, then you will forever lose the chance to give special treatment." Qin Chuan nodded vigorously and replied, "I can definitely do it." Sitting cross-legged on the field, Wang Wei looked at the entrance of the field. 2 minutes before 8 o'clock, Qin Chuan's tall and straight figure finally appeared in his sight. Qin Chuan slowly walked in front of Wang Wei and said loudly, "Reporting to instructor, I'm here." Wang Wei looked at Qin Chuan up and down. After a while, he said casually, "I can see that although you have recovered a little, you are still mentally and physically exhausted. You may not be able to learn much if I give you special treatment in this state." Hearing this, Qin Chuan chuckled and replied, "Instructor, what I need to do now is to break through my limits again and again. Only then will I be able to make greater progress. In that case, let's cut the crap." Wang Wei stood up and said to Qin Chuan, "In terms of physical strength, you should be the strongest among all the students in this year. But this is far from enough to become an excellent exo." Hearing Wang Wei's words, Qin Chuan immediately asked, "What should I do?" Wang Wei looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said to him, "Follow me to the training room. I will tell you what to do." Wang Wei put a black vest, a pair of wrist guards, and a pair of knee guards in front of Qin Chuan and said to Qin Chuan, "Put them on. You can't take them off from now until the special training is over." Looking at the few things in front of him, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "Are these used to protect me?" "No, they're used to train you." Wang Wei picked up the wrist guards and loosened his grip. The wrist guards fell to the ground with a bang, and the ground caved in. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be dumbfounded. This is a gravity suit. It will produce 10 times the gravity on your body. As long as you don't take it off, you will always live in an environment with 10 times the gravity. This will be a great burden on your body, and at the same time, it will have a great impact on your life. Wang Wei explained to Qin Chuan. You can choose to refuse. Qin Chuan looked at the gravity suit in front of him and smiled. I think this is what I need most right now. I can't possibly refuse. Then put it on. Wang Wei said to Qin Chuan. There's a gravity training room over there. You can adapt to it for a while in the training room before putting it on. By the time Qin Chuan put on the gravity suit, it was already an hour later. The feeling of living under 10 times the gravity all the time made Qin Chuan feel indescribably sullen and uncomfortable. However, he did not intend to give up because of this. He had to grit his teeth and endure this most difficult period. Wang Wei stood by the roadside and looked at Qin Chuan's back as he walked away step by step. His face could not help but reveal a touch of gratification. It had been decades since the establishment of the Tianhai Special Training Camp. It had been too long since he had seen a young man as motivated as Qin Chuan. As expected of a representative figure of the younger generation, I really wonder how far he can go in the future. Chapter 648. Qin Chuan, are you okay? Luzi looked at Qin Chuan's slightly pale face and asked with some concern, was yesterday's training too hard? After taking the special nutrient, a professional relaxation massage, and a whole night's rest, Luzi's physical condition had basically recovered. She thought that Qin Chuan would recover better than her. But looking at Qin Chuan's appearance, it seemed that he was very uncomfortable. Qin Chuan gently shook his head and said to Luzi, I'm fine. Don't worry. After putting on the 10 times gravity suit, Qin Chuan did not sleep well the whole night. His whole body was in pain, and some parts were even swollen. It could be said that it was not a light torture. He once had the thought of giving up, but he gritted his teeth and persevered. You still say you're fine. When LVZ saw Qin Chuan in this state, she asked anxiously, were you tortured by the instructor last night when he gave you special treatment? It's not like that. Don't think too much. Qin Chuan shook his head again. I'm really fine. This has nothing to do with the instructor. Go wash up. I'll be right there. Seeing this, LVZ could only helplessly get up and walk towards the bathroom. Qin Chuan, on the other hand, consumed a special healing agent. After the swelling on his body had subsided a little, he got up and prepared to wash up. At this moment, every step he took felt as if his body was being ruthlessly slashed by a knife. The pain was excruciating, but this was the path he had chosen. No matter what, he could not give up. When Qin Chuan and Lu Zi arrived at the field, it was already 6:50. Everyone had already arrived. Everyone who was as tired as dead dogs yesterday was now in high spirits. They seemed to be in good condition. On the other hand, Qin Chuan looked like he had not slept for the whole night. His whole body was emitting a strong and weak aura from inside out. Everyone was a little surprised when they saw Qin Chuan's appearance. They did not understand why after one night, when everyone else had recovered, Qin Chuan's condition was even worse. Is this the result of special treatment? Someone sighed. It seems that special treatment is not something that can be done casually. When everyone heard this emotional voice, the expressions on their faces became somewhat subtle. As for why Qin Chuan was still so weak after a night of rest, it was likely that the side effects of the special treatment was the only explanation. Diwu Qingyan slowly walked out of the crowd and came in front of Qin Chuan. She said to Qin Chuan, you can keep the pure heart pouch with you. You will be in better condition. Thank you for your concern. Qin Chuan smiled, but there's no need. I'm fine now. Qin Chuan understood his own situation very well. His current problem was definitely not something that could be solved by the pure heart pouch. What he needed to do now was to adapt to the current environment. Just as everyone was talking, Wang Wei also came to the field. He glanced at everyone's condition and then said indifferently, the time starts now. Everyone 100,000 meters, 50 minutes. Hearing Wang Wei's words, everyone was not surprised. 100,000 meters was still 100,000 meters, but the time had been reduced from 1 hour to 50 minutes. What was surprising was that Qin Chuan's treatment had changed again. Qin Chuan, you run 100,000 meters, 1 hour. Hearing Wang Wei's request for Qin Chuan, everyone's expression became a little subtle. Wang Wei was actually different from his usual self. From yesterday's high request for Qin Chuan to today's low request. Who could tell them what happened when Qin Chuan was giving special treatment yesterday? Qin Chuan did not care about what others thought. He lowered his head and ran. Seeing this, the others also started running. Compared to yesterday, everyone's condition today was excellent. It was also easier for them to run. On the other hand, Qin Chuan was the slowest and was at the back of the team. Qin Chuan glanced at Lu Zi, who was following beside him, and whispered, "Don't worry about me. You run." Lu Zi saw Qin Chuan's condition. Although she was anxious, there was nothing she could do. She could only run forward while looking back every few steps. Qin Chuan, on the other hand, was running slowly at the back of the team. He endured the pain in his body and gritted his teeth as he kept moving forward. When the others finished their training within 50 minutes and sat down to rest, Qin Chuan was still running. He was even a distance away from finishing the training. Everyone looked at Qin Chuan's condition and then looked at Wang Wei's expressionless face. They felt somewhat lucky. Originally, they were thinking about whether to learn from Qin Chuan and ask Wang Wei for special treatment. Now, they completely dispelled this idea. They did not want to end up as miserable as Qin Chuan. Finally, when there were 13 seconds left to the 1 hour, Qin Chuan finally ran 100,000 meters. At this time, his face could be said to be extremely pale. His body was trembling as if he could fall at any time. Lu Zi saw this and wanted to reach out to support Qin Chuan. However, she was rejected by Qin Chuan. "You don't have to help me. I can do it myself." Qin Chuan tried to stand up straight and said to Lu Zi, "You just need to train hard. Don't be distracted by my condition." "Okay, today's morning exercise is over. Let's start the first class." Wang Wei did not intend to give Qin Chuan extra time to rest. He directly led everyone to the training room. Their first class today was related to physical training. However, it was not just simple running. It was a comprehensive physical training. When everyone started training according to Wang Wei's requirements and completed it quite well, Qin Chuan was at the back of the team. Not only was he the last to complete every training, but he had also exceeded the time limit. Regarding this, Wang Wei had no intention of punishing Qin Chuan. Although everyone felt strange about this, they did not think too much about it. When Lu Zi saw that Qin Chuan did not have any accident and was able to persevere through the entire training, she could finally focus on training without being distracted by Qin Chuan's condition. Just like this, when the day's physical training was over and everyone went to relax and adjust their physical condition, Qin Chuan was still persevering through the last training. Wang Wei slowly walked to Qin Chuan's side. Looking at Qin Chuan, who was still gritting his teeth and persevering through the training, Wang Wei sighed and said, "I didn't expect you to be able to persevere until now. To be honest, I have been waiting for you to find me since last night." Qin Chuan heard this and grinned. He panted and said, "Sorry to have made you wait for nothing. Although I have waited for nothing last night, I am in a good mood." Wang Wei chuckled. "I haven't seen such an interesting guy like you in a long time. Now I am very curious to see how far you can persevere. I hope you don't give up too early." "I will not give up." Qin Chuan gritted his teeth and said, "The word give up does not exist in my dictionary." Chapter 649. By the time Qin Chuan finished his training, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. At this time, everyone else had already finished what they were supposed to do. All that was left was to rest, but he still had a lot of things to do. Lu Zi stood at the entrance of the training room, watching Qin Chuan walk over step by step with difficulty. She couldn't help but feel sorry for him. She knew that Qin Chuan was very strong and didn't need her sympathy. However, it was too difficult for her to watch Qin Chuan suffer without feeling anything. Qin Chuan saw Lu Zi standing at the door and grinned. I knew you would be here. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. You can go back. Lu Zi shook her head and said to Qin Chuan, I'll accompany you to eat and adjust your body first. Then we'll go back together. Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi strangely and replied, I can't eat yet. The instructor wants to give me special treatment. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Lu Zi's eyes widened in disbelief. She exclaimed, Special treatment? Is he going to kill you? Seeing Lu Zi's intense reaction, Qin Chuan grinned and said to Lu Zi, It's not extra training. It's more suitable for me to relax. The instructor said that his method can help me recover faster. I think that's what I need the most in my current situation. After hearing Qin Chuan's explanation, Lu Zi's agitated mood calmed down a little. She snorted and said to Qin Chuan, At least that guy has a conscience. He didn't forget to help you recover after tormenting you like this. Qin Chuan chuckled and didn't explain too much. But even so, Lu Zi personally sent Qin Chuan to Wang Wei's residence before returning to their dormitory. After all, Qin Chuan's current condition was very bad. She was worried about letting Qin Chuan walk so far to find Wang Wei alone. After Lu Zi left, Wang Wei's figure appeared beside Qin Chuan. He looked at the pale face of Qin Chuan and chuckled. You're really lucky to have a girlfriend who cares so much about you. Qin Chuan smiled and explained, Little Z is a very good friend of mine, a very good friend. Hearing Qin Chuan's explanation, Wang Wei smiled and replied, It seems that you already have someone you like. Does she know? I can see that she likes you very much. Instructor, I'm here to ask you for special treatment, not to gossip. Qin Chuan said helplessly, This is my personal matter. I don't want to talk about it. Well, it seems that our relationship isn't so harmonious that we can joke around. Wang Wei spread his hands and said to Qin Chuan, Come with me. I'll take you to enjoy the most comfortable feeling in the world. Hearing Wang Wei's words, Qin Chuan's face couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. The most comfortable thing in the world? Why does it sound so weird? Under Wang Wei's lead, Qin Chuan walked into Wang Wei's residence, which was a building that was nearly 100 meters tall. This was the residence specially built for Wang Wei when the Sky Sea Special Training Camp was established. In Wang Wei's words, although it was small, it had all the essentials. The interior was well-equipped, and its performance was enough to be ranked in the top 5 of the entire Star Dragon Federation. Welcome back, Mr. Wang Wei. Also, welcome to our new friend. Just as Qin Chuan and Wang Wei entered the door, a tall and sexy figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Looking at the beautiful woman in maid attire in front of him, Qin Chuan's eyes flashed slightly and asked, Is this your personal hobby? It's just an artificial intelligence in maid attire. Why are you so excited? Wang Wei chuckled. Her name is Ella. She constantly changes her clothes every day. To be honest, I don't know what she'll wear next. Saying that, Wang Wei said to Ella, Ella, this is Qin Chuan. In the future, he can freely enter the training room and treatment room here. Okay, I got it. Ella pursed her lips and smiled, then said to Qin Chuan, Student Qin Chuan, remember to come often in the future. Qin Chuan heard this and grinned, then said to Wang Wei, I didn't take the initiative to ask for this. This is a benefit that you gave me. I won't thank you. You're still pretending to be obedient after receiving benefits. Wang Wei smiled. In fact, other than me, you're the second person who can freely enter and leave this place. Do you know why? Qin Chuan asked curiously why. Because you're the most special young man I've ever met. Wang Wei glanced at Qin Chuan. I really want to know how far you can go and how high you can stand with the best conditions. The next morning, although Qin Chuan's condition was still not fully recovered, it was much better than the day before. At least, he could now carry out normal training without needing special care. Everyone naturally noticed the changes in Qin Chuan's body. Regarding this, they just thought that Qin Chuan did not continue to give him special treatment and did not think of other possibilities. After 5 consecutive days of physical training, everyone finally had the opportunity to get close to a battle suit. Although most of the students who participated in the special training camp were children from rich families, they rarely got close to a battlesuit. This was because only those who had an EXO qualification certificate could own a battlesuit, and it was not easy to become an EXO. At 7 o'clock in the morning, everyone gathered in front of the battlesuit room according to Wang Wei's request. They could see the inside of the battlesuit room through the transparent window. Looking at the battlesuits displayed in the showcases, everyone's heart was burning with passion. That battlesuit should be the famous West Wind battlesuit, right? The West Wind battlesuit is nothing. Look at that one. It's an old model from 100 years ago. I think it's called King of War. Are these the battlesuits we are going to drive later? That's so exciting. Wang Wei appeared behind them at some point. Looking at the people who were talking about the battlesuits, nostalgia flashed in his eyes. When he saw a battlesuit for the first time, he was as excited as he was wishing that he could immediately become an excellent EXO and fly in the sky with a battlesuit. However, only those who had really touched a battlesuit knew that it was not so easy to become an EXO. Little guys, don't be delusional. What you need to do now is to familiarize yourself with the battlesuit, not drive it. With your current level, it's still too early for you to drive a battlesuit. Hearing Wang Wei's words, everyone subconsciously looked back and said respectfully, "Greetings, instructor." Wang Wei nodded to everyone and said, "Let's go. I'll show you around." Chapter 650. After Wang Wei opened the door of the battlesuit room, everyone rushed in excitedly and walked quickly to the battlesuits they were interested in. They carefully observed every detail of the battlesuits through the display cabinets. If it weren't for the fact that photos were not allowed, they would have taken pictures of the battlesuits from every angle. Looking at the excited crowd, Wang Wei chuckled and said to everyone, "Gather." Hearing Wang Wei shout, everyone immediately gathered at Wang Wei's location. In just a moment, they were in a neat and orderly formation. This was the result of the past 5 days of training. If they didn't gather within 10 seconds after Wang Wei shouted the word "gather," everyone would be punished. Under the threat of punishment, everyone did what they were supposed to do. Wang Wei looked at everyone standing in front of him and said with a serious expression, "Every battle armor you saw in the battle armor room has a glorious battle record. I don't want you to surround them like monkeys. Do you understand?" "Understood," everyone replied in unison. Their actions just now were a little too presumptuous. Now, I will tell you the story of each battle armor room. Everyone must listen to me patiently. When the time comes, I will ask. If anyone can't answer my question, then they can take a day off. Hearing Wang Wei's words, everyone's expression became serious. They didn't want to lose the opportunity to touch the battle armor room because they couldn't answer his question. Wang Wei slowly walked to the side of a battle armor that was mostly shattered. He said to everyone, "This battle armor is called King of War." It was the battle armor of the famous Golden Core realm expert, Wang Tai, 100 years ago. In that battle, Wang Tai piloted King of War and slaughtered his way through the demon race's army. He killed dozens of demon commanders and successfully broke through the demon race's command center. After that, Wang Tai's old injuries relapsed and he died. The Wang clan's descendants were incompetent and the clan fell. They took out King of War to auction. I bought it for 3 million spiritual value points and placed it here. Hearing Wang Wei's words, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that King of War would appear here and that so many stories had happened. The second battle armor is called Meteor Shower. Wang Wei introduced the stories of the 10 battle suits in the showcases as if he was talking about his family treasures. Everyone present listened to him very carefully. After explaining the origin and story of these battle suits, Wang Wei didn't ask them any questions. Instead, he led them to the warehouse where the battle suits were stored. When the door of the warehouse was opened, dozens of clean and tidy battle suits of the same model appeared in front of them. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, "Armor battle, armor battle, armor battle, armor room." This is the first time I've seen so many battle suits in my life, and one of them even belongs to me temporarily. Hearing everyone's cheers, Wang Wei smiled faintly and said to everyone, "What you see now is the standard armor used by the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Corps of the Star Dragon Federation Army. Although it's a model from 20 years ago and not the latest, it's enough for you guys to train. Now, everyone go find your battle armor room, according to the number you got when you arrived at the training camp." Hearing Wang Wei's words, everyone dispersed and went to find their battle armor room. Qin Xuan and Lu Zi found Battle Armor Room 17 and Battle Armor Room 18 respectively. Their faces were filled with excitement. Qin Xuan, Battle Armor Room is battle armor room made by the military. It's easy to operate and has both offensive and defensive capabilities. It's the best battle armor room for newbies. Lu Zi looked at the 2-meter-tall battle armor room and said with anticipation, "I can't help but want to sit in it." Qin Xuan chuckled. "Me too. All right, newbies, don't get too excited yet." Wang Wei looked at everyone and said, "In the next 2 hours, what you need to do is to understand the battle armor room in front of you as soon as possible. Understand its functions and structure. There are instructions on how to use the battle armor room on the photon computer. Remember to read it carefully and understand it." Hearing Wang Wei's words, everyone noticed that there was an AI under each battlesuit. They opened the AI, and all sorts of experimental data about the iron armor battlesuit appeared before their eyes. Everyone was like a dry sponge, crazily absorbing the sea of knowledge, understanding everything about the iron armor battlesuit at the fastest speed possible. 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye. When Wang Wei called everyone came back to their senses as if they had just woken up from a dream. Seeing everyone's reaction, Wang Wei smiled and said, "I think you guys can't wait to drive the battle armor room in front of you. Now, I'll give you this opportunity. Whoever can drive the battle armor room out of here as fast as possible, I'll give him a big reward." Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard Wang Wei's words. Some busybodies directly asked, "Instructor, tell us what the reward is first." Wang Wei chuckled and replied, "In the following training process, you will be divided into groups of 2. The person who walks out of the room first will have the right to choose his teammates first. The person who is chosen is not allowed to reject it." Hearing Wang Wei's words, everyone's eyes lit up even more. If these male students want to team up with someone the most, it would definitely be Diwu Qingyan. For a moment, everyone looked at Diwu Qingyan with burning eyes. Facing these burning eyes, Diwu Qingyan's expression could not help but become a little strange. "Qin Xuan, are you confident that you can get first place later?" Lu Zi looked at Qin Xuan with a slightly strange gaze. Hearing this, Qin Xuan chuckled and said to Lu Zi, "Don't worry, I'm different from those people. If I get first place, I'll definitely choose you." Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Lu Zi's face immediately revealed a satisfied smile. This was the answer she wanted. Wang Wei looked at everyone who could not hold back their excitement and said loudly, "The competition will now begin." As soon as Wang Wei's voice fell, everyone immediately followed the instructions on the manual and opened the cockpit of the battlesuit. They rushed in, wanting to take the initiative. However, just as they were about to drive the battlesuit and take the first step, they directly fell to the ground with a loud bang. Chapter 651. Clang, clang. With the sound of the first falling to the ground, 2 more battlesuits fell to the ground. Even if the other battlesuits did not fall to the ground, their situation was not very good. All of them were swaying and staggering, just like children who were learning how to walk. Seeing everyone's performance, Wang Wei chuckled and said lightly, "With your current performance, I estimate that you won't be able to walk out even if I give you a day." Everyone who was working hard to drive the battlesuits felt their faces burning when they heard Wang Wei's words. They thought that after reading the operating instructions of the battlesuits, even if they could not immediately drive the battlesuits in a battle, they should at least have no problem moving normally. However, the reality was that they could not even take a step normally. Why is it so difficult? Qin Xuan thought that he would be different from the others, but in fact, his performance was no different from the others. He was just as clumsy, and it was just as difficult for him to even take a step. Pada! Qin Xuan tried to drive the battlesuit to take a step, but he did not control his strength well and directly stepped on the ground, creating a deep pit. Half of his legs sank in. If not for that, he would have been lying on the ground like the others. Qin Xuan tried again, using both hands to support his body, trying to pull his leg out. Because of his previous experience, he deliberately reduced the strength in his hands this time. But because the strength was too small, his whole body only shook a little, and he could not pull his leg out. When he tried to increase the strength, because the increase was too great, his arms sank deeply into the ground again. Qin Xuan felt a headache coming on. He couldn't use too much strength, nor could he use too much strength. This was too difficult. Wang Wei had been paying attention to Qin Xuan. When he found that Qin Xuan was in the same predicament as the others, a smirk appeared on his face, as if he had already expected that Qin Xuan would be in trouble. Just as Wang Wei was about to say something to everyone, an iron armor battlesuit lying on the ground suddenly got up slowly and slowly walked towards the door step by step. Seeing this scene, Wang Wei's face could not help but show a hint of surprise. He did not expect that someone could overcome all kinds of obstacles in such a short time and complete the basic control of the battlesuit. Number 6. If I remember correctly, this should be Diwu Qingyin's number. Wang Wei looked at the insignia on the battle armor that was firmly moving forward, and a subtle look flashed across his eyes. He did not expect that Diwu Qingyin would actually obtain first place in this competition. At this time, the people who were still lying on the ground were looking at the number 6 battlesuit who was moving towards the door with envious eyes. They were not envious of the limited choice of teammates, but of his outstanding talent in piloting a battlesuit. When Diwu Qingyin drove the number 6 battlesuit to the door, Wang Wei clapped his hands and said to everyone, "Everyone, listen up. There's a green button on your right. Press it and the battlesuit will automatically return to its original position. At the same time, you can come out." Hearing Wang Wei's words, although everyone was unwilling, they still pressed the green button on their hands, and the battlesuit automatically returned to its original position. When the cockpit opened, everyone crawled out in a slightly embarrassed manner. They stood on the ground and looked at the holes they made. Their faces were red and hot, and they were a little embarrassed to speak. At this time, Diwu Qingyin had also driven the battlesuit back to its original position. She crawled out of the cockpit and landed on the ground easily. The expression on her face was not proud, but rather a little shy. Wang Wei looked at the various expressions on everyone's faces and said indifferently, "A few days ago, some people were very dissatisfied because of the physical training every day. They thought that you were here to learn how to drive a battlesuit, not to strengthen your body. Now, I have given you the opportunity, but you did not cherish it." Hearing Wang Wei's words, everyone who complained about the physical training a few days ago showed a touch of shame on their faces. If they had not experienced it personally, they would never have thought that piloting a battlesuit would be such a difficult thing. If you want to become an excellent XO, first of all, you have to control your own strength to the extreme. While speaking, Wang Wei walked to the side and took out a strength tester. He raised his hand and punched 10 times on the test panel. Each punch had a strength of 100 kilograms, no more, no less. After doing this, he stepped aside and said to everyone, "Who wants to give it a try?" Hearing Wang Wei's words, Qin Xuan took the initiative to step forward. He walked in front of the test panel and punched out a score of 186 kilograms. Then, he tried to reduce his strength and punched out a score of 94 kilograms. He tried to increase his strength and punched out a score of 109 kilograms. After dozens of tests, he finally punched out a score of 100 kilograms. But then his next punch became 101 kilograms. Seeing Qin Xuan's result, Wang Wei said to everyone, "Did you see it?" Everyone nodded. Wang Wei could easily punch 100 kilograms with each punch, but Qin Xuan could only punch 100 kilograms with each punch after dozens of attempts. Also, not to mention 10 consecutive punches, it was difficult for him to even punch twice. This was the gap between Qin Xuan and Wang Wei in terms of controlling their own strength. A huge gap. Looking at everyone who was deep in thought, Wang Wei said casually, "When you can punch as many kilograms as you want, and when you can punch out that kind of strength continuously, you will be able to pilot a battlesuit as you wish. Therefore, the next training I have arranged for you is the training of controlling your own strength." If Wang Wei had said this before they tried piloting a battlesuit, perhaps many people would have raised objections. But now, no one could say no, because they had clearly realized their own shortcomings. There was still a long way to go before they could pilot a battlesuit freely. Since no one has raised any objections, let's start splitting into groups. Wang Wei looked at Diwu Qingyan. Diwu Qingyan, as the winner of this competition, you can choose your teammates first. Let's start with you. When everyone heard Wang Wei's words, they subconsciously looked at Diwu Qingyan. Many people hoped to be chosen by Diwu Qingyan to become her teammate. However, just as everyone was looking forward to it, Qin Chuan shrunk his neck and deliberately hid in the crowd. When Diwu Qingyan saw Qin Chuan hiding, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She said to Wang Wei, "Instructor, I want to choose Qin Chuan as my teammate." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.